All right, let's get it. Drive time Tuesday afternoon, 10 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. We got a little sunshine today. The sun is shining here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. It is about 50 degrees. We are high speed ahead to a pretty massive snowstorm in the mountains coming up this weekend. It's March in Utah, man. You never know. You never know. Going to get some rain and snow the rest of the week, and then it looks like it's going to be warm again next week. But as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. Porter Larson producing the program today behind the glass. We got a jam-packed Tuesday show. Jam-packed Tuesday show. It's a big night in the world of local college basketball. Of course, national college basketball as well. The Ides of March shining upon us. West Virginia is in town to take on the Utah men's basketball team. That game tips off at 7 o'clock. It's on ESPN+. So if you have nothing to do tonight, first of all, congrats. That must be nice. Second of all, head up to the Huntsman Center. Support these young men as they have had a emotional couple of weeks. Of course, the world of college basketball, college athletics can be cruel to head coaches. Craig Smith has lost his job, but reinforcements on the way. We'll get to it today. We'll get to, of course, the breaking news that came down a little bit earlier. A couple of different reports. The first one coming from John Rothstein, covers college basketball on a national level. He said, quote, sources, Dallas Mavericks assistant coach Alex Jensen has emerged as the primary candidate for the head coaching vacancy at Utah. No offer has been made yet, but he's at the top of the Utes list to replace Craig Smith, played under Rick Majerus, was an assistant with the Jazz. Then our very own Sean O'Connell breaking the news that this is imminent. Multiple sources saying that Alex Jensen coming home to take the Utah men's basketball job. So we will get to the reports. We'll talk about the latest. If anything comes down while we're on air, which I doubt, we'll bring it to you. I mean, it's a game day for the Utes, so I don't think we're going to hear anything from the Utah Athletic Department, but if that changes, we will let you know. Utah Jazz dog-walked last night by the red-hot Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are 9-2 in their last 11. And the Jazz, of course, sat Lauri Markkanen. They sat Jordan Clarkson. They sat John Collins. The race for the bottom continues. As long as you're one of the bottom three. And I know that's a weird thing to cheer for as a fan, but that's kind of where we're at. Jazz hit the road now for a 5-game road trip. Fun honor for Isaiah Collier. He was named Western Conference Rookie of the Month for the month of February. Isaiah's had a really, really good year. And kind of out of nowhere, unexpected. He's played some good basketball. So we'll do some Jazz. We'll do some NBA. Saquon Barkley got paid as he deserved to be. Devontae Adams is looking for a new home. The Jets have waived Devontae Adams. We'll get to the latest in the world of the NFL offseason. And could this be the final spring game for Utah football? We're going to have Coach Witt on the show tomorrow. Kyle Whittingham will stop by the show tomorrow. More than a dozen schools have either done away with their spring game or if they've kind of pivoted and recalibrated. We'll get to some of that on the program today with a jam-packed guest list on a Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for making us a part of it. Sarah Todd covers the Utah Jazz for the Deseret News. She'll stop by right out of the gates at 2:30. Aaron Falk, their triumphant return of our guy AF. It's been a minute, the sports editor for the Salt Lake Tribune Fake News. He'll stop by in the 3 o'clock hour. We'll do a bunch of different stuff with Aaron Falk, including some local college hoops and local college football. Little RSL with Aaron as well. Real Salt Lake gets the win in their home opener. And now we'll see if they can kind of keep it going as we move forward. After Falk stops by, it's NBA Daily Assist style with Tim McMahon. Tim not only covers the Utah Jazz for ESPN, he covers the Dallas Mavericks. That's where Alex Jensen is an assistant coach. So we'll bring in Tim today for the latest on the landscape of pro basketball. But we'll ask him about Alex, who several sources have reported he is in the final year of his contract with the Dallas Mavericks. Is that germane to the situation? Not sure, but of course everyone's curious about what's next. As far as the head coach for the Utah men's basketball team, then you got to fill out a staff. You got to start building. I hope they don't sit on the announcement. Hope it's something they can get done, and only time will tell. Sarah Todd, Aaron Falk, Tim McMahon. And then after Tim stops by, we'll get the latest with the Utes. And the latest with Alex Jensen with Josh Furlong, who covers the Utes for KSL. So Sarah Todd, Aaron Falk, Tim McMahon, Josh Furlong, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Happy Tuesday to you. That young man, Porter Larson, Tuesday afternoon. It appears imminent that the next head coach for Utah men's basketball is Alex Jensen. All the tea leaves, if you read them, as you do, seem to indicate as much. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and this is, as we've talked about, the direction that A lot of folks behind the scenes, unaffiliated with the university, have wanted this to go. And I'm talking boosters, I'm talking money, power brokers up on the Hill that unofficially very much have things to do with what's going on there. And no reports or I guess announcements from the school that it's across the finish line, but we'll wait and do our affiliate obligations there and go from there. But yeah, all signs pointing to this is essentially being his job for the accepting or denying. And Alex, I think 3 years ago, this may have been a longer shot, but it seems like we keep going on and on thinking he's going to be the next guy as an NBA head coach. And for some reason or another, that hasn't been the case. And I think the timing, not only the timing of all of the rumors swirling this morning, last night, and the last 48 hours, but also the timing of when Craig Smith was let go, it kind of gave me the idea that there was something already in the works. And it appears that's what's going on, and we will probably know sooner rather than later, but maybe that's wishful thinking.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll kind of see how this thing goes down. Makes it kind of fun, though, and there's a lot of buzz around town around this story, so we'll get to it. Our first guest will be Sarah Todd from the Deseret News, covers the Utah Jazz, but on a Tuesday, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks. It is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Second half of the basketball season is here. The race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks. It's the best place to get cash on your favorite sports. Don't miss your chance to cash in. It's the league's best fight for playoff positioning. The best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Utah. App is really easy to use. It's probably my favorite app to use when it comes to trying to figure out the landscape of gambling on sports. To create a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few player stats to win up to 1,000 times your money. Very easy to do. So Jazz Pistons last night, something like Malik Beasley, more or less than 3.5 3-point shots made. Isaiah Collier, more or less than 9.5 assists. You get those two right, and then you get up to 1,000 times your money, and they're giving you free money to see if you like it. You might as well go get that and then give it a try. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win and receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So download that Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. You get $50 instantly when you play just $5. All right, so several reports, a tremendous amount of reports. You can just Google Alex Jensen, Utah basketball right now, and you will see a ton of reports talking about the news today that started with a tweet from John Rothstein, who covers college basketball for CBS, and he's one of college basketball's preeminent news breakers. This was about 5.5 hours ago. According to John, he said, sources indicate Dallas Mavericks assistant Alex Jensen has emerged as the primary candidate for the head coaching vacancy at Utah. No offer has been made yet, but he's at the top of the list to replace Craig Smith. Played under Rick Majerus, was an assistant coach with the Jazz. Our very own Sean O'Connell here on ESPN 700, breaking that essentially this is imminent, and they're moving in that direction. As Porter mentioned, of course, there is nothing that has been officially announced by the University of Utah. These things are not easy, and they take time. I don't know where we're at in the process. I will back up my guy, Sean, and I will back up anybody who has reported, including our friends at KSL, including our friends at Sports Illustrated, including our friends at the Salt Lake Tribune, that Alex is the main target, and it looks like this is the direction that we're going to go in. It's a little bit of a complicated thing if you're Mark Carlin, if you're Taylor Randall, namely your basketball team is still playing, namely you have a game tonight, and you have an interim coach in Josh Eilert, certainly, who was asked to do a very difficult thing after Craig was let go. So Utah men's basketball in action tonight against West Virginia at the Huntsman Center. It's your final chance to see these young men here at home. 7 o'clock Mountain Time tip. Utah's your favorite, actually, a 3.5-point favorite. And I think it's fair to wonder, how has this news landed with the team? How has it landed with the coaching staff? And where are we right now in the process? Can't corroborate whether or not this is imminent or whether it's getting done. But like I said, I'll back up the reports and believe the good work of people that cover these things on a day-to-day basis in a way that I just don't. It's interesting how this business has kind of changed. A lot of people simply just have one lane. You cover college football recruiting. You cover college football breaking news. You cover college basketball breaking news. You're assigned to one team or one conference. On this show, we try to do everything. We try to cover everything here locally, whether it's the Utes, whether it's the Cougars, the Jazz, or RSL. We bring you as much as we can to cover the scope, and that's why I always say go to the podcast page, listen to the portion of the show that you want to listen to on your time. So I will, again, back up our guy Sean and back up all the reports that Alex Jensen is going to be the hire. What's the time frame? I don't know. Like, if this is the deal, ultimately my preference would be to get it done and announce it right away. And yes, is that a little bit unfair to Josh Eilert? Probably. Is it a little bit unfair to these young men? Probably. But, life is not fair. And this is big business. This is an important deal. And if you're Mark Harlan, as we've talked about, you're under a lot of pressure to get this thing right. And, when Mark fired Larry Kraskowiak 5 years ago, a lot of alumni joined our show. A lot of alumni decided to make their voices heard about what they'd like to see next in place of Coach Kraskowiak. And most everybody talked about Johnny Bryant, Alex Jensen, Ute alums that understand the landscape of Utah basketball, understand the community, and have a chance to get this thing back to where it needs to be. And not just for a year or two, but consistently. Not just a moment in time. Ray Giacoletti, Jim Boylan, Larry Kraskowiak, Craig Smith, they all had moments. They all had wins. They all had moments where it looked like this thing was going in the right direction. But none of them were able to build it up where it was consistently good enough for the power brokers and decision makers at the institution, and certainly the community that has been pretty disenfranchised with college basketball for a long time, if we're honest, outside of just incremental, fun moments. It has to be built slowly. It has to be built with the long game in mind. And Alex Jensen makes a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons. First of all, of course, Alex is a legend around here. He was Mr. Basketball in 1994, playing for Viewmont. He ultimately is the closest thing you're going to get to Rick Majerus because he was an assistant for Rick at St. Louis. And he has worked his way up the ranks in pro coaching for the better part of 18 years. St. Louis, Canton College, came here and was an assistant coach for a decade. He was the #1 assistant coach for Quinn Snyder. And interestingly enough, Quinn did not hire him. And I always viewed this as a real testament to who Alex is as a person, who Alex is as a coach, that Quinn Snyder took over for Ty Corbin and essentially remade most of the bench, but kept Alex as the #1 guy. Alex was Quinn's #1 assistant. Quinn is a smart guy. He is a bit of a maniacal guy, but he's very, very calculated when it comes to decision making. And if he had even an inkling that Alex wasn't the guy, Alex would have been gone. Quinn got rid of a lot of people. He remade Ty's bench for the most part, but he kept Alex as the lead assistant coach. Alex Jensen, NBA D-League at the time, it's the G League now, but Coach of the Year in 2013. It was just his second season as a head coach in the D-League then, G League now. And then he got the job with the Jazz. If you miss Smitty's breakdown of just how hard it is to coach in the G League or the D League back then, I thought that was really illuminating. I mean, ultimately, the challenge you have as a coach in the G League is every single one of your players to a man, top to bottom, they do not want to be there and playing for you. They're all trying to play to catch the eye of an NBA scout, to grab an NBA contract, and go live the NBA dream. It's not just players. Coaches don't want to be there. Players don't want to be there. Front office guys don't want to be there. PR guys don't want to be there. The broadcasters don't want to be there. They're there with the idea that if I'm good enough on this level, I can work my way up to where I make more money. I'm playing with the best players in the world, and I'm living that dream. And so for Alex to be the G League Coach of the Year, that's not nothing. Quinn Snyder, once upon a time, G League Coach of the Year. Taylor Jenkins, Memphis Grizzlies head coach, once upon a time, G League Coach of the Year. Alex also worked internationally, German national team, and he led the United States as the head coach for the 2022 FIBA America Cup, and he's been in Dallas now for a couple of years. The other thing Alex has in his back pocket is the same thing Kevin Young has in his back pocket. And if you listen to Kevin when he has an opportunity to speak, he always references his years in the NBA. That's calculated because all of these young players, all of these young men who are looking to play college basketball, I always go back to the John Calipari line where he was interviewed prior to a game when he was at Kentucky, and the broadcaster asked him, how many pros do you have on your roster? How many NBA guys do you have on your roster? And John said, Coach Calipari said, I've got 12. Go ask them. Go in the locker room and ask everyone. So Alex Jensen, like Kevin Young, has the ability to go into a living room and sit down with parents and a father that might be really bullish on his son's future to maybe go play pro basketball and change the lives of everybody in the family. That's what these guys do, man. When they make it to the pros and they sign a couple of contracts, it changes generations. A lot of these young men not raised in great wealth and the hopes of their families on their backs. And Alex can go sit across from a young man and a father and say, Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Gordon Hayward, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, and I know I'm missing a few, right? Like, I coached these guys. Do you want your son to know what he needs to do to be one of them? Well, send him to play for me. Now, of course, we need to wait to hear what the staff looks like. We need to wait to hear what the training staff looks like and everything else. But all indications pointing towards Alex Jensen, high speed ahead landing here as the next head coach for the Utah men's basketball team. We'll get back to this. Of course, it's the big news of the day today, but we'll pivot and do a little jazz coming up on the other side with Sarah Todd. Our friend Aaron Falk, 3 o'clock hour. Then it's Tim McMahon, Josh Furlong. Busy Tuesday show. Good to have you with us. Don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Tim McMahon is going to join us today, NBA Daily Assist style. Tim covers the NBA, covers the Jazz, also covers the Dallas Mavericks. So we'll get Tim's thoughts on the Alex Jensen news that has surfaced earlier today. Aaron Falk, editor of the Salt Lake Tribune, will roll by. Josh Furlong had a flight change, so we're going to pivot a little bit in the 4 o'clock hour. But let's start off with a champion. Let's start off with somebody that just stacks trophies. 2 Utah Sports Writer of the Year awards, our queen, Sarah Todd, on a Tuesday. Hello, champion. How are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, after an interview like that, how can I not be doing great?
Well, what's it like just to win awards all the time, as opposed to those of us who just do our job every day and nobody ever recognizes our awesome work?
It's hard. It's hard to be me, you know?
Oh, goodness. Sarah, I want to start with, I would imagine you were able to get to know Alex Jensen a little bit during his stint here. He was here 10 years. It overlapped with you taking your job. And a lot of reports, including our very own Sean O'Connell, John Rothstein, who covers college basketball. It's not done yet. Obviously, there's contracts and negotiations that have to take place, but it sure seems to indicate Alex Jensen's high speed ahead to moving back to Salt Lake City to take the Utah men's head coaching job. What are your thoughts on this developing situation?
I mean, I think it's clear, but there's obviously a lot that went into like Kevin Young going to BYU, right? Like, and there's even more to it when you consider Ryan Smith and the connections that like Danny Ainge and stuff have. But even if it was just Kevin Young and not all of the other factors, having someone that has that much NBA experience and can look at these young guys and say, like, if that's where you want to go, I know what you have to do to get there. Like, and it's not like they were NBA coaches 20 years ago, right? Like it was yesterday. And so those kinds of things really, really help recruiting. And I think that these young kids, like, that's what they want, right? And yeah, the chances are slim, but it's good. And as for Alex, like, he's a great person. I got to know him, his wife, actually his father-in-law too, while they were here in Utah. And they're great people. They're good coaches. And Alex was loved by the people that he coached, and that's also important. So the way that I see it, only good things.
Tell me one more question here, because he is widely credited by Quinn himself as well with the evolution of mainly Rudy as far as the bigs go. But, of course, he coached Fave. He coached a lot of those young Jazz bigs. Ennis, while he was here as well. But, the evolution of Rudy Gobert from his rookie year, where it just didn't look like it was going to work at all, quite frankly, to a Hall of Famer, multiple Defensive Player of the Year, multiple All-Star awards. Look, Rudy deserves the bulk of that credit, but if you talk to anybody around the organization, they were glowing with their praise about the way Alex worked with him. Tell me what you saw with that dynamic, Sarah.
Yeah, I wasn't here for the early days of that, but I certainly talked to Rudy a lot in the years that I was here. And it's not just people around the organization. Like, Rudy would credit Alex with so much of his development. And I think that, you're right that Rudy deserves the bulk of that credit. But if he's the one that's going to be giving credit to someone, then, like, you have to listen to what he's saying. And there's so much when these young players, and we're looking at so much of it now with the Utah Jazz, right? Like, when these young players are developing, there's a lot of guesswork, and it's about maximizing potential that someone on the outside sees, but also the person that is developing has to be willing to kind of like grab the opportunity with both hands and like really go for it. And it all is like, it needs to be the perfect storm. And I think that at that time, like Rudy, his determination, work ethic, Alex Jensen, what he was willing to do, how hard he wanted to push Rudy, because from what I've heard, like he really challenged him and pushed him in ways that no one else would. It was just the perfect storm.
All right, moving over now to the Utah Jazz. Let's start with some fun news for Isaiah Collier, named Western Conference Rookie of the Month for the month of February. He's kind of caught a lot of people off guard. Of course, we know the background. He was very highly recruited coming out of high school. One of those players, kind of like Michael Porter Jr. was, where if they were allowed to enter out of high school, Isaiah might have been a top 5 pick. Goes to SC, doesn't go all that well because, that was a bit of a mess with Andy Enfield on his way out, and they had Bronny there as well. And so he slipped in the draft. The Jazz were able to grab him late in the first, and ever since Will made the choice to start Isaiah and bench Keontae, and we'll get to Keontae in a moment. Let's stick with Isaiah. I think Isaiah's really responded. So what do you make of as far as the way he's embraced the potential to start as the lead guard, the way he's played, and your thoughts on this fun award for this young kid?
Yeah, I think, well-deserved because he's kind of responded with an opportunity and done really well. I get a lot of flack because I'm not as high on Isaiah as a lot of other people are, but that's because I'm thinking, 5 years down the line, every night that I watch this team, every time that I interact with anyone, I'm trying to think, what's this going to look like 5 years from now? And so I'm thinking, is Isaiah Collier, is he good enough to be a starting NBA point guard on a team that's actually trying to win a championship? And I know that that's a crazy question to ask of someone midway through their rookie year, right? But I just need to continually be asking those questions about every player on this team. And if it's not that question, is this player good enough to be included in a trade that would get the Jazz something of value that would be useful for a team that wants to win a championship? And so I think that he's making all of the right steps in that direction. I love the pace that he plays with. It's my favorite part of his game is the way that he pushes the ball, not just for how it results for him, but how it forces the other players on the team to kind of get in line, and they need that. And so I think that sets such a good example for everybody on the team. Obviously his passing is great, but I have to ask the, devil's advocate questions. Is his passing look great because the most recent people we were watching pass the ball is Taylor Horton-Tucker and Keontae George? Is his passing great because no one else on the team is passing the ball? The assist got to go somewhere, right? And is this the kind of guy that could play point guard in the playoffs? And I think that those are still question marks. I don't think that those are answered yet. And so do I hope that those are answered and that he continues to develop and he's great? Absolutely. Is the award from the NBA deserved? Absolutely. But he's still a rookie, and so I'm still waiting.
Well, and the other thing, Sarah, is if you're going to be a lead guard in pro basketball in the year of our Lord 2025, you can't shoot 23% from three. He's I don't know if it's getting jumpers up over the offseason. I will say this, and I get asked this all the time, you probably do as well. You can learn to shoot, okay? You can learn to shoot on this level. You just have to put in a lot of work and be willing to get up early and go meet with your shooting coach and get hundreds of jumpers up every single day in the offseason. When Karl Malone was a rookie, we would pray that he would hit the backboard when he was shooting free throws or the rim just to get just to be able to get the rebound. And he turned himself into a really good spot up, face-up shooter, a good free throw shooter as well. So you can learn to shoot. When Isaiah is fully baked, what do you think it looks like?
Yeah, I mean, Brooke Lopez is a person that is in the NBA, right? We have seen guys not even Isaiah has the benefit of he already shoots the ball some, right? There are guys who did not shoot the ball at all and then have become good shooters. And so there is 100% chance, you're right, a chance, an opportunity, potential that he could learn how to do this. But when he's fully baked, what does that look like? I can't say 100% that he's going to. He could, right? And so you still have to put a question mark on there. I can't say that he's going to be able to. If you're going to throw him in the playoffs right now, absolutely not. He cannot be your lead guard if he can't shoot, and also if he is still willing to kind of run downhill and not always have a backup plan, or run into three guys that are way bigger than him and try and shoot over them. There are things in his game that he needs to clean up. Turnovers and shooting are the biggest one. And as Will Hardy has been pointing out lately, his ball pressure, his defensive effort, and how much attention to detail he is using on that end of the floor. Those are the things that have to actually develop in order for him to be considered a guard that could last into a postseason.
I don't care if you're John Havlicek, Manu Ginobili, or Keontae George. When your coach comes to you and says you're not starting anymore, you're going to take that as a demotion. And you could see it in Keontae's body language early on. And quite frankly, you could see it in the production. And, when you look at a lot of his splits, there are still numbers that are very concerning, but he has been a little bit better as of late. The 3-point percentage is up to 35%. The field goal percentage is up to 40%. I don't know what we can do to get our guy to at least pretend like he's going to try to guard, because that thing still, he's a marathon away from being an acceptable NBA defensive player. But same question I asked you about Isaiah. Since this rotational switch took place, what are your thoughts on the way Keontae has handled it?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like when Keontae is pushed down to the bench, like you can see it in the body language, like he is taking it as demotion. But I think that's kind of the key word here, right? Like the body language wasn't that great when he was a starter, right? Like he carries himself in a way that makes you feel like he is deserving of something, but we have to remember how young he is and that he needs to prove he deserves something still. And absolutely, he should be taking it as a demotion. He should be looking at it as like, oh wow, I need to like really do something and wake up and show everyone that I'm not some diva. I'm not entitled. I don't think that I deserve everything. And I'm not saying that he acts like a diva, but like he had a real opportunity with the Jazz team, and right now, like Isaiah Collier's taking that away, and that's not anybody's fault but Keontae's. And so what's really interesting about Keontae, and I think is really obvious, is that there have been a couple of games when we've seen him try on defense. And there have been games where we've seen him really take care of the ball. And so it's not like he has a game where it's like, oh, I don't know if he can do that. We have to still wait and see. It's like, well, no, we know that he can do it. It's just that he's not doing it. And so that's where the problem is with Keontae. I think that Keontae has all of the skill and potential to be a really good player. And it's just whether or not he's going to want it bad enough to do it. And some guys come into the league with that kind of skill and they're able to maximize all of it. And they become really good players. Like, borderline all-star is what you could see out of him. But if he's not going to use all of his skill and maximize all the potential that he has and really take a hold of the opportunity, then he probably will just end up as like a seventh man in the league. And that's not bad, but it's not as good as he can be. And so I think that that's like the message here, right? Like Will Hardy, I'm sure has said similar things, but he's not going to, just take Keontae out of the starting lineup and put a rookie in his place and not have said things to him. And so I have to imagine that Keontae has heard all of this, and now we just have to see how he handles it from this point moving forward.
There's a lot to like about Kyle Filipowski in college. The question, as it always is will that translate to the pros when he's not thought to be some dynamite athlete with great speed and great explosiveness, but he's got good size, he has good skill. And in spurts, in moments, it has translated, and certainly over the past month and a half, when he's had more opportunities, we've seen some really good games from Kyle Filipowski. Just the same question. We're going to kind of run down the list of the young players because I haven't talked to you in a minute. As we sit here today, early March, where are you at with the development of Kyle Filipowski?
Yeah, I think Kyle's game has a ton of translatable attributes. The passing, his footwork, his shooting. He's actually changed his shot release this season. And doing that during the course of an NBA season rather than the off season is really difficult. And so that shows initiative and some work ethic from him that I think is really good to note. The worst thing that Kyle has right now, and it's just going to take time. It's the same as with Cody Williams. He's not strong enough at all. He has to be stronger. He needs to gain strength. And he needs to be willing to just kind of put his body into plays 1,000,000,000% more than he is right now. We understand. You can look at Kyle Filipowski and look at guys like, Valanciunas or even Jalen Duren, who's the same age as Kyle Filipowski, but is clearly stronger than him, right? From last night's game. He's just getting bullied. He's getting pushed around. And we know that there are times, again, we've seen there were moments where Kyle played He was matched up with Jokic in a game earlier this season, and you could tell that he was really, really trying to, plant his feet and not get knocked off his spot, and he was using a little bit more force, and that's what you want to see from him the rest of the season. It's like, we know you're going to get pushed around. You are not the strongest guy out there. Nobody thinks that you're going to be able to hold up Jokic and keep him from getting to the basket, but you want to see him try. And then this off season, it's really about him gaining strength, because that's probably where the biggest weakness in his game is.
Let's stick with the good news before we move over to the space of maybe some things that are problematic. And, if there's one bright spot this year, if you're asking me for the best news, if you're a Jazz fan, it's what Walker's done, man. Year 3 after a rough sophomore campaign. And it's got to be a bit of a relief, quite frankly, for the front office and the coaching staff to watch this young man approach this year the way that he has. Put up monster numbers, and when he is not playing, the difference is stark. They do not guard the rim at all when Walker's on the sideline. So I feel like Walker has played his way into a clear part of the future and a clear piece to this puzzle. What's been the Sarah Todd take on watching Walker Kessler's evolution year 3?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's the best part of this season for the Jazz, the brightest spot. I'm working on a story about Walker, kind of a longer dive into what's been happening this season, and I think, there's a lot to be said about the strength that he's gained, the work that he's done, trying to use his voice more on the court, which helps the defense when he's out there too. But I think that the biggest difference has been a mental shift for Walker. He went his first season coming into the league and just being I'm just glad to be here, right? And just appreciating every moment and not really paying attention to results or individual stuff. But when he was out on the floor, just trying his absolute hardest because he was so grateful to be here. And his second year, he started to overthink, and he started to just look at things a little differently. And often he was pretty negative, and he would say that himself. And I think that, and he did a really, really intentional job over the off season, talking with, a sports psychologist, working on just different ways to center himself and try and approach every day, every game, every practice with gratitude rather than thinking about anything negative. And he said that, I'm just going out to have fun and try to help the team. I'm trying not to think about anything else. And I think that the mental shift and focusing on the team's betterment rather than what is happening to him individually has really, really changed. And I know that's kind of a woo-woo answer for Walker being better this season, but I think it's a really big part of it. And he was really intentional with making that a part of it.
All right, got to ask you about Cody. I am certainly not one, after being around this league as long as I have, I will not anoint nor dismiss a 20-year-old, no matter what, 36 games into his pro career. But, Sarah, it just hasn't looked good. It really just, it's not just data. It's the eye test. He had a couple of passes last night where you're like, dude, what exactly were you seeing there? Are you concerned for a top 10 pick to not necessarily show the organization or the fan base, in my opinion, enough consistent hope? Or are you still optimistic about what Cody can be?
A little bit of both, right? Absolutely, I'm concerned. I think that anybody that's been watching the Jazz and watching Cody, you can't not be concerned. At the same time, I recognize that he is a rookie. He's incredibly small. He kind of has the same thing as what we were talking about with Kyle. He has to gain strength. The problem is that some of the guys with his body type, he's so slim. It just is going to take more time. But that's not to say that slim guys can't be forceful and can't be good in the NBA, right? One of the more recent guys that I think about is Mikal Bridges. Not as tall, but still really, really slight frame, was at least that skinny, if not skinnier, coming into the league, and was nearly a defensive player of the year. I'm pretty sure he was top 3 in the year that he was voted. And so there are cases where guys with frames like that like can be good, and I think that kind of is the mold that the Jazz see for him, like being like a 3-and-D wing. But he also has like potential. I mean, I know that it hasn't looked good, but like I'm not completely really willing to write him off yet, and I really really hope that we can see some more good stuff out of him next season. But I just don't think that he has the tools to do it this season. And I know that it's a small sample size when we think about like Taylor Hendricks playing in the first 3 games of this season, right? Like it's insane to even really look at just 3 games and try and take anything out of it. But if you compare what Taylor Hendricks looked like if you only looked in the first 2 games this season compared to what he did last season, like we're talking about a guy who looked like he didn't even know how to run back on defense last year. Okay. But we're all very excited about the potential of Taylor Hendricks because of how different he looked, how much more attention to detail he had just in a couple of games. And so for a guy like Cody, where it looks so bad this season, I still think there's potential. And like, if we're going to be giving guys like Isaiah Collier or even Kyle Filipowski, and we think about Taylor Hendricks, if we're going to be giving them the benefit of the doubt about being projects or young guys that need more time to develop and aren't going to stand out exactly their rookie year. Think about Rudy Gobert, right? Like it looked horrible his rookie year. And so I'm still willing to give it some chance and some time, but you're absolutely right. Like if you're watching it this year, you are concerned.
KJ Martin's got a little something, and I've always thought that. Now, if he was a very important player, he wouldn't keep changing teams. So I don't know if they're long for him, but he is 24 years old, which kind of fits the timeline. I mean, look, we talk about anybody who's not the first and the second year guys as if they're like 40, right? And, some of the players like Collins only 26, but at 24 years old, KJ is still young. I think he has 14 dunks already. I mean, he is such an elite athlete. Is there any chance that the Jazz are looking at KJ Martin as maybe something that they'll continue to look at and keep around for a few years?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting thing with KJ because, I mean, I know that Will likes him. The first time I ever talked to KJ, I knew that, that's a Will Hardy guy because, like, the first words out of his mouth were, like, the most important thing to me is playing hard, no matter what the situation is. Like, you just have to put in effort on the defensive end. It's like, okay, well, Will's going to like this guy. And like, he spent a lot of time the last couple of years working on navigating screens and getting his body in better position on defense. And so he's making a lot of adjustments to kind of mold himself into a player that teams are going to want to keep around. And he's got a non-guaranteed contract for next season. And he also has a January 10th, like, fully guaranteed date. So the Jazz could, like, keep him around and try him out for a little while next season before they need to, like, make the full investment by January. And he's just really interesting. He seems like the kind of guy that would be good for some of the young guys to have around. But it's like, do you want to spend $8 million on him next season, depending on who you get in the draft and, like, positionally where he's going to be? There's a lot of moving parts, and I think it's going to be really interesting what the Jazz do with him. I don't know exactly what they are going to do, but it's not like it's a really high number. It's also not the lowest number. And could they try out another, young guy? And could they get someone in the draft that might be playing that position? Or, and there's a lot of moving parts there. But he is definitely somebody that intrigues me. And I think that his attitude and his temperament are kind of exactly what the Jazz are looking for.
Before I say you lose, it is reported that the Jazz signed Jaden Springer to a 3-year deal. I'm sure based off of the way they've handled some of the other deals, there's not a lot of guarantees in it. But I'll just ask you the same question because we're focused on the group of young players. We kind of know the deal with everybody else. Is there a chance they're looking at Jaden Springer as a piece of the puzzle moving forward?
Well, maybe. I think that's more of like a tryout situation. We saw what they did with like Kenny Lofton and Darius Beasley previously, and it's the same kind of deal. It's non-guaranteed through the 2 years after this season. But I also think that I don't have this like on like reported from anybody in the front office, but this is just my vibe, right? Like if if I'm Keontae or Isaiah and I see them sign James Springer, and I know that, you know, Colin, Bryce, Jordan, uh, even Elijah Harkless, like all of the other guard wing guys that are on the roster, if I see them sign Jaden Springer and I see that they're giving him minutes, if I'm somebody like Keontae, I'm like, I'm hoping that the message is, well, absolutely not. I'm not letting that guy get minutes over me, right? Like maybe it's just another kick in the pan because we've heard Will say what he likes about Jaden Springer is his intensity and effort on defense. And I just don't think that's by mistake.
Good stuff today, Sarah. Always appreciate the time. Keep stacking those trophies, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Spence.
All right, Sarah Todd covers the Jazz for the Deseret News. Does a great job. She's brought to you today by our friends at Ogden Clinic Hadley Dermatology. Now, here's the deal. Ogden Clinic Hadley Dermatology, Dr. Michael and Dr. Jason Hadley and their great staff, they've been clients on the show now for a little while, and they're giving you incredible deals to make sure that, simply put, you're in a safe place. So I did not know this until we started working with our friends at Ogden Clinic Hadley Dermatology. We are the #1 state in the country in skin cancer diagnosis per capita. And the reason is we kind of live in the desert, and there's a lot of sun. So if you're like me, once this weather turns consistently, and you'll be outdoors all the time playing golf, hiking, riding your bike, whatever it is, just go get checked up to make sure you're good. And they're offering you a free skin consultation, which A, saves you a grip of money, and B, gives you peace of mind. Or C, hopefully this isn't the case. They find something, but they're able to help you before it gets, a situation where it's a little bit too late. And you either are in a bad spot, you've got to have Mohs surgery or whatever. Get ahead of it, okay? Early detection can save your life. It also can save you from some sort of massive surgery where they got to take out a piece of your face. It's a real thing. If you're outside, Jason and Michael all the time, they're telling me, you got to get in and get checked out. So I go in once a year. I go in once a year for a comprehensive skin consultation. I didn't get it for free. It's a lot of money, but you guys can get it for free. Just get the skin consultation. They'll check you head to toe, and you can go from there. They're also offering a percentage discount on Botox, a percentage discount on laser treatment. They've got acne treatment discounts for your teenager if you're struggling that way. Hair loss. I know of 3 of my friends that have seen Dr. Jason Hadley about their hair loss situation, and he's been able to help them reverse it. So if you're losing your hair and you're looking for solutions that way, they've got it. Also, we had Christine in last week, talked a lot about dry skin issues and how you should go get checked out in case you have copious amounts of dry skin to make sure there's not an underlying issue. The best news is, more often than not, you go up there, you get checked out, they send you on your way, they say you're good. But take advantage of these offers right now: skin consultation, Botox, laser treatments, acne treatments, hair loss, and dry skin treatments. With our friends in Ogden Clinic Hadley Dermatology, save a grip of money to get these treatments done by calling this number right now. It's 801-657-5664. That's 801-657-5664, 801-657-5664. Or you can visit HadleyDermatology.com to schedule your appointment today. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Tim McMahon joins us coming up next. He covers the Mavs. Alex Jensen, is he on the way to Utah? Aaron Falk, Salt Lake Tribune, Ken Pomeroy, KenPom.com. A lot to do on a busy Tuesday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. He is indeed Band McMahon. 220,000 X followers. That's a large number. You are a celebrity reporter, man. There's no at this point. You are on that level, Tim. You are a celebrity reporter officially.
Well, at least 110,000 of those people I wish would just go away and not follow me based on some of the comments I get on that particular hellscape of an app.
Fair enough. Well, it obviously means you're doing something right, buddy.
I don't know that we should equate social media following to any sort of value, but that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about basketball.
Let's talk about Dallas Mavericks assistant coach Alex Jensen, who, according to a number of different reports, including John Rothstein from CBS and our very own Sean O'Connell, is high speed ahead to take the head coaching job at the University of Utah. You cover the Dallas Mavericks, Tim. Any insight here?
Yeah, obviously, when that job came open, Alex immediately became the number one candidate. And, it's my understanding that essentially he could have had that job the last time that it came open. Now, I think one of the big differences between the last time and this time is, Alex's path to a potential head coaching job in the NBA is not nearly as likely at this point. But he had a great run as a player for the Utes, obviously. Was on a Final Four team there. Obviously has a strong feeling of loyalty to that university. And, in some cases, you say, well, can an NBA guy succeed in a college job? I would say that Alex is a Utah guy with significant NBA experience. Then there's also concerns, well, a guy who's an assistant coach, can he move in a head coaching seat? Look, it was for the Canton Charge in the G League, but Alex has been a very successful head coach. This is not going to be his first time in that seat. Now, look, the NIL, the recruiting, all the things that come along with college basketball, obviously, he's going to have to get up to speed on all that stuff quickly should he take that job. But I think it makes way too much sense for this not to happen.
Only because you're very plugged in. I'm going to ask you a follow-up because nobody around here seems to know what sort of timeline we're looking at. It's ironic Utah basketball plays a game tonight, and they do have an interim head coach, and the Mavs are, and we'll get to the poor Dallas Mavericks in a moment, but they still technically are playing basketball. Do you, Tim, have any insight as far as how far along they are in the process to get this deal done?
I don't. I know that I know that Alex had conversations with people at the highest level of the university. I don't know. I'd just be guessing if I said this is something that could happen and become an immediate type of deal. Obviously he's still under contract with the Mavericks. I don't know if they would expect him to finish the season if he accepts his job. All that stuff I'd just be guessing on. And
I would imagine you'd be guessing, so I'll just ask, and if there's nothing there, we can move on, whether or not the Mavs badly want him back and whether they would, try to retain him despite an offer from Utah.
I think that I know Alex is valued by the Mavericks. I don't think they would stand in the way of him taking this job.
Gotcha.
I would just leave it at that.
Fair enough. All right, man. I'm not a Mavericks fan. I am a Kyrie fan when he is focused on basketball. And this could not be worse if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan. First of all, you trade away a generational talent at the age of 25, and the guy you trade him for goes down. And now the guy that kind of stepped in as your leader and the ball-dominant lead guard goes down, Kyrie with a torn ACL. How's it going down there, man? What's the reaction and kind of what's next for the Dallas Mavericks?
Well, I'm in Phoenix right now, so I can't tell you exactly what the reaction is on the ground in Dallas, but you can imagine. I mean, this is just a devastated franchise, a franchise that has been through so much, some of it of their own decision-making, some of it just medical misfortune this season, and there was still hope. And the hope was, hey, Kyrie's playing at an all-NBA level. If you can get Anthony Davis back, if you can get Derek Lively back, get 2 or 3 weeks into the regular season, go into what would have to probably be the play-in scenario, but maybe catch lightning in the bottle, build some momentum. There was still hope they could make a run this year. That obviously is completely gone at this point. at this point, does it make sense to bring back Anthony Davis and Derek Lively? I mean, it wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Mavericks just decide to prioritize lottery odds at this point. And unfortunately, man, this is something that's going to have an impact on next season. Like an ACL, we've seen like Jamal Murray, Kristaps Porzingis, when they suffered ACL injuries around this time of year, they missed the entire next season. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Kyrie, but I don't think it's reasonable to have the expectation that he's going to be back from the beginning of next season. It's uncertain at best. And, a fan base that has just had its guts ripped out by the trade of Luka Doncic, has developed this great love and appreciation for Kyrie, who frankly was a phenomenal leader throughout all the chaos, was the one person of prominence in the organization that I would say was completely on point with his messaging in the aftermath of that trade. His performance has been at all NBA level all season long. Such an emotional moment last night where you can, like, if you saw the replay, you knew, like, this is best case scenario was probably going to be a season ending thing. There's not that much season left. Clearly the knee buckled, his mentor and idol Kobe with the Achilles, limps out to the free throw line, gets his shower of appreciation from the crowd, makes the 2 free throws. In that moment, though, he could tell that his season was over. It's just, another heap of misery on top of what's just been a brutal month-plus stretch for Mavericks fans of that franchise.
How safe is Nico as far as his job goes? I mean, obviously he had the backing of the new ownership group or he would not have done the deal. And I know this is kind of unfair because we're analyzing it in a vacuum, and I guess you give it a year to see if these guys get healthy and they do something together. But based off of just how catastrophic the last couple of weeks have been in Dallas, do you think he's safe as far as his job goes?
What I can tell you is Patrick Dumont, the governor of the franchise, has voiced strong public support for Nico Harrison. But there's no guarantees that come along with that. A lot of people around the league are asking me that question, and that's the answer that I give. He has the support of the ownership group as of now. If that changes, I'll report it. But that's where it stands right now. But hey, everybody understands this is a very results-oriented business. There was a massive risk with the trade that they made. The reward so far has been nothing. But backlash, and I don't think the ownership group understood the financial ramifications of trading Luka Doncic like they did. I really don't. There's this fear of the Supermax. From a financial perspective, this is going to cost them a lot more than what a Supermax contract would have been.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt, and you just feel bad for Mavs fans. I saw the story that the Mavs have raised ticket prices, and look, I'm an adult, I'm a grown up. I know the deal. This is a front facing, revenue generating entertainment product, and more often than not, ticket prices are going to go up. I just wasn't on board, I guess, with the timing of that announcement. I think you probably sit on that maybe until the offseason.
I mean, again, there's been one PR misstep after another in the wake of what you knew was going to be probably the most unpopular trade that an NBA team has ever made, if not a professional sports team. So you can add the ticket price hike on top of a lot of other things.
Fair enough. All right. Golden State 8-2 since the Butler trade. And every time you hear Draymond or whoever talk about and Steph has been next level as well. I wonder how much of that has to do with Jimmy being in the fold, but are you buying kind of this resurgence? They've beat some pretty good teams with Jimmy, and we'll see what they do against the Knicks on the road. But your thoughts on the latest with the Warriors after that Jimmy Butler deal?
Well, yeah, you mentioned 8-2, and one of those losses, obviously, was when Jimmy took a night off to nurse, I believe it was a sore back. You have to kind of, respect the pedigree of the players that are the core guys there, and have your eyes open. It's a very small sample size, but it's clicked quickly. I do believe that Steph has been rejuvenated by this deal. Jimmy Butler has not won a championship, but has proven to be the driving force in playoff success. Obviously, when you talk about Draymond and Steph, we're talking about guys who have won 4 titles and one as recently as just a few years ago. I think you have to at least acknowledge that the Warriors are going to, I don't think they have a great chance to come out of the West, but I think you at least have to acknowledge that they are on the list of teams that have some sort of a chance there.
The LA Lakers, as long as they don't face the upstart Utah Jazz in Salt Lake City with Luka on the roster, obviously tongue in cheek. But my goodness, Tim, if it's going to look like this, now look, if like Jokic will go for 90 if you're going to guard him with Alex Len and Jackson Hayes or whatever. So certainly the front court issues are still there. But when you have those two, Mark Daigneault has to be looking at what the Lakers are doing and at least. At least they have to have his attention, and you're the guy for this, covering Luka, writing the book on Luka. What do you make of the early returns, how it's worked when those two have been on the floor together, when JJ staggers the minutes, and your thoughts on them winning 6 straight now?
Well, you mentioned Joker, and they played the Nuggets and blew them out, and Joker only got 7 shot attempts in that game, which was a game plan win. Plus, that was, Luka had actually a good offensive performance in that game. So I'm fascinated to see. I'd have to look at the schedule to see if they have the Nuggets again in the regular season or should they meet in the playoffs. But kind of the adjustments to the game plan and the chess match there. But the Lakers, for a span of over a month and a half now, have the number 1 defense in the NBA. And that obviously was before the Luka trade, during AD's injury absence, and then coming out of the Luka trade. And you got to give JJ Redick credit, man. He's doing a great job coaching. He's come up with with this scheme that makes up for the lack of a traditional rim protector there. And he's got buy-in. The most important thing is he has buy-in. From 40-year-old LeBron James on down to that roster, Luka's fully bought in. When he's engaged, he can be, as a help defender, a good defensive playmaker. Then you got to obviously protect him. When he's on the ball and try to keep him out of those situations and protect him when he is. But they're having this success, and Luka, by his standards, has only had a couple of decent scoring performances. He's averaging 22 points on sub 40% shooting. The guy's going to give you 30 points on good efficiency once he gets a rhythm. And as far as like the fit with him and LeBron, it's been phenomenal. I mean, LeBron said it. He's a natural-born wide receiver. Luka's a natural-born quarterback. And, Luka's spoon-feeding LeBron easy bucket after easy bucket. LeBron's playing, I think LeBron might play his way on the MVP ballots at the age of 40, which is insane. But tell me 5 better players, 5 guys who are having better seasons than him right now in the NBA.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. There's no doubt about that. Ant Edwards, 16th technical, so he will be suspended. And Minnesota continues to kind of be up and down. It's been an interesting week regarding Anthony Edwards when asked about, being the face of the league. He kind of pump faked on that. LeBron with his comments on, well, why would he want to be the face of the league when everybody who talks about our game just takes a bleep on us all the time? Where are you at right now with the growth of who a lot of people believe is the best young domestic player in Minnesota?
Yeah, and look, the technical stuff, like he's got to get that under control. I thought what Chris Finch said before the game that Ant served for suspension in Utah, actually. I thought what he said was on point, where like Ant has to get the outburst under control, but he's not an angry guy. He's not a guy who's berating the officials, from the opening tip to the final buzzer. He has to get his emotional outbursts under control, but he doesn't want Ant to be unfairly labeled, as just an angry malcontent type of guy. The face of the league stuff, honestly, like, I don't know, man. What is a face of the league? Is it a polished spokesperson? Well, that's not going to be Ant Edwards. And honestly, like, dude, his team's in the play-in right now. Coming off the Western Conference Finals trip last year, he's focused on trying to get the Minnesota Timberwolves right. He doesn't need to have the weight of the league on his back. If he ends up reeling off a few titles and all those things and kind of organically becomes the face of the league, cool. But I don't know. Again, I just think this is kind of like this media figment that is it's like a fictional beast. It's like a unicorn. Like they face of the league. I don't know, man. Like Do you grow those things somewhere? It happens organically. So like, it's not like you're not running for mayor. What's he supposed to do? Have a campaign speech?
As someone who talks about the league on a daily basis, what did you make of LeBron's comments of folks such as yourself? I'm not sure who he was talking about, but taking a bleep on the league every day.
Yeah, I don't think he had me in mind, but I've certainly been accused of being critical of guys. And look, man, like the NBA is a multi-billion-dollar business, and the media plays a role in that. And I think that it's the media's job to appreciate greatness when appropriate, and to criticize, shortcomings or like when that's appropriate. And those can be with these same people. I covered Luka Doncic for his entire career in Dallas. I wrote and talked a lot about all the awesome things that he did, and then I pointed out and wrote and discussed the very obvious flaws that he has. There are Laker girls; those are the cheerleaders, right? There are fans; those are the people who are. I don't know. I don't even think fans should be expected to cheer regardless of the circumstances. But it's not the media's job to kiss guys' butt regardless of the circumstances. It's also not the media's job to go out of our way looking to rip guys. There's a blend. There's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of gray there. It's not just purely, you're either on their side or you're not. I'm not on anybody's side. I'm on the side of the truth and explaining and reporting and discussing what's actually happening in the league, good, bad, and otherwise.
Yep, well said. Hey, before I set you loose, you recently wrote about Darius Garland, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Look, man, they're 14-1 in their last 15, and they went into Boston last weekend, and Donovan, oh my goodness, Donovan was so good, and that was such a great comeback. And Boston played well. It's not like Cleveland capitalized on the Celtics crumbling, but at what point do we just start to say, like, look, maybe it's not Boston and everybody else, and we have to look at Cleveland in a way that maybe we haven't started looking at them yet?
Well, you need to start looking at Cleveland as a legitimate challenger. They're going to be the number one seed. They won 50 of their first 60 games. All the stuff about does that core four fit together? Absolutely it does. I mean, we've seen that. They've proven that. Can they beat the Celtics in a series? I don't know, but I think it's going to be a hell of a series. I think they're going to get the opportunity. I think it's going to be a hell of a series. And, I know there's mixed feelings about Donovan, I'm sure. In Utah, but I've covered Donovan since the beginning of his career. I wrote about this rising star when he was a couple months into his rookie season in Utah. I covered everything that happened there, and I kept up with things in Cleveland. I think Donovan is at the perfect point of his career where he is matured. He has grown. There was certainly some diva stuff with him in the past, caring about stats and all those things. I think he's grown past that. He's in his prime, but he's not worried about stats and status. In that story, he even acknowledges, like, hey, his stats dipped as part of empowering Garland, as part of empowering Mobley, playing a little bit fewer minutes in the interest of the long-term health of trying to keep him fresh for the playoffs. And he acknowledged that's something that he wouldn't have been okay with in the past. He's gotten to that point. And I think the Cavaliers, his co-stars have benefited greatly. The Cavaliers as an organization have benefited greatly. And I do think that part of Donovan Mitchell's case for being on MVP ballots, I mean, he's not going to win MVP, but for being, if you want to put him fourth or fifth on an MVP ballot, part of his case is that he's the leader of the team with the best record in the NBA. And as part of his leadership, he's been willing to see his stats dip a little bit in the greater, the interest of the greater good.
Tim, you're the man. Appreciate the time today. Have a great week. Enjoy Phoenix. We'll chat soon.
All right. Appreciate you, brother.
Tim McMahon covers the NBA for ESPN, covers the Jazz. Not as much this year because, get him on Twitter at ESPN_McMahon is where you find him. Brought to you today by Burt Brothers. With over 30 years of experience and nearly 30 locations, Burt Brothers ASC certified technicians bring expertise and professionalism to every interaction. Industry-leading warranties and low-price tire guarantees. It's a one-stop shop for reliable repairs and maintenance, from tires and alignments to fluids and brakes, offering a full range of automotive services tailored to meet your needs. Now offering value tire options such as Americus and Summit tires starting at just $69 with warranties that go up to 70,000 miles. As one of the few AAA certified shops in Utah, Burt Brothers upholds the highest standards in automotive service. Stop by Burt Brothers or Tire Busters locations or schedule an appointment today to experience the trusted service that has made them a Utah favorite for over 3 decades. Burt Brothers, doing it better since day one. More information online at burtbrothers.com. All right, coming up on the other side, some breaking news about the Utah men's head coaching basketball search. That was a convoluted way of saying that, but we'll tell you what it is coming up on a Tuesday drive right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. I had to give Duke a very stern lecture during the break. Our station mascot, my 4-year-old English cream puppy Duke, is here, and he got a little aggressive when we were going to get snacks. He pulled me so hard that I'm now bleeding out of my right knuckle.
There we go.
We've got some excellent snack givers who love dogs in the office, and Duke.
Is that the secret? I need a dog.
You get it, dude. The secret to life is you should get a dog. But Duke knows where the snacks are, and I still keep him on the leash because I don't want somebody to complain in the office. And he just pulls me everywhere. So he pulled me around the corner, and I'm bleeding out of my right knuckle. So I had to have a little lecture, a little talk with our guy Duke.
You gotta put him in his place sometimes. Be the alpha in that wolf pack.
Oh, calm down, okay. Shout out to our guy. Was the bull? Hang in there, bull.
Shout out to the bull.
Yeah, it'll be another day.
Dogs. Yeah, I guess I can get some dates. I can get some snacks. I just need a puppy.
Yeah, that's all you need, man. Okay. It's secret to life. All right. Obviously, big news of the day today is that all the reports are indicating Alex Jensen is on his way. He's coming home to take the Utah men's basketball job. So here's what we know as of now. I'll start with a report from CBS Sports' John Rothstein, who covers the world of college basketball, does a really good job. I've followed John for a while. We've had him on the show a couple of times. About 6.5 hours ago, John tweets out, sources indicate Dallas Mavericks assistant coach Alex Jensen has emerged as the primary candidate for the head coaching vacancy at the University of Utah. No offer has been made yet, but he's at the top of the list to replace Craig Smith. Alex played under Rick Majerus and was an assistant with Utah Jazz. Followed by our guy, Sean O'Connell. And if you're not listening to the Sean O'Connell show 11 to 2 every day, you should do that. Sean does a great job for us here on the station. So during Sean's show, he tweets out multiple sources telling me that former Ute and longtime NBA assistant Alex Jensen is coming home to take the Utah men's basketball job. And while I was interviewing Tim McMahon, who covers the Dallas Mavericks, by the way, Jeff Goodman, one of the preeminent newsbreakers in the world of college basketball, says the front runner for the Utah job is Dallas Mavericks assistant coach Alex Jensen, and a deal could be done in the next day or two. Sources tell the Field of 68, that's who Jeff works for now. Jensen was on the 1998 Utes team that coached by Rick Majerus that lost to Kentucky in the national title game. And then Jeff goes on to talk about Alex a little bit in his past. Jensen was a Utah Jazz assistant from 2013 to 2023. So there you go. We have multiple reports by credible people that indicate this is imminent. Obviously, we are the home of the University of Utah. We're home of the Utes, and we'll wait for their release, of course, to make this thing official. But if every single person who is reported on this, both locally and nationally, are reporting that it is Alex, there's too much smoke at this point for there not to be fire. Can things change all the time? Yeah, things change all the time with these things. I can remember from a personal standpoint, we were living here. My father was with the Utah Jazz, and he got a job offer to be the general manager of the Denver Nuggets. So we're at home. We're getting ready to pack our bags. Like, we're moving to Denver. And I was bummed out. Loved Salt Lake. Didn't want to leave. And Monday of the following week, the deal fell apart. It's like, we're still living in Salt Lake. We ended up moving back to Connecticut. My father took the job in New York, and all's well that ends well. But this stuff is fluid, man. Alex has a family. He has a wonderful wife and some beautiful girls. And so I'm sure they're talking behind the scenes about what they want to do and what could come next. And this is the type of move that is life-changing for a number of different reasons. I mean, I would imagine if you're Alex Jensen, you're not looking at the Utah job as a stepping stone. This is a little bit different, in my opinion, than the situation 5 years ago after Mark Harlan elected to move on from Larry Krzyzkowiak. And by the way, if you missed Tim McMahon, Tim said his understanding is Alex could have had this job 5 years ago before Mark landed on Craig. Tim would know. So 5 years ago, Mark Harlan fires Larry Krzyzkowiak. According to reports, Alex could have taken the job then. I was unaware of that until just a few minutes ago. And I suppose after conversations, either Alex did not want to give up that NBA lifestyle or Mark decided to move on to Craig Smith. But again, as we've talked about, this just is a little bit different now because my guess is, and I don't have any inside information here, but my guess is 5 years ago, Alex Jensen finds himself in the midst of a really good run with the Utah Jazz. Quinn Snyder, your head coach. Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Joe Ingles, that entire group. You know, they're winning a lot of games. They're not winning a ton of playoff games, but they're winning a lot of regular season games. Alex highly credited with the evolution and growth of Rudy Gobert from a absolute project to an all-star and a multiple Defensive Player of the Year award winner, a Hall of Famer, quite frankly. And I can tell you this. I can't speak for Alex, nor would I try. But the feel around Alex back then was this guy is an NBA head coach. Kind of like the feel around, Kevin Young, BYU head coach, that he was going to get a head coaching job at some point. I know Alex interviewed with the Cleveland Cavaliers at one point before they landed on J.B. Bickerstaff. Obviously, they've moved on from J.B., and he's doing a hell of a job, and they're thrilled with Kenny Atkinson. And Kevin Young, once upon a time, interviewed with Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics, I believe before they landed on Ime Udoka. And also, Kevin interviewed here in Salt Lake with Danny. They obviously know each other well, LDS ties, before the Jazz landed on Will Hardy. So, a lot of similarities between Alex Jensen and Kevin Young, a lot of similarities between what the approach Utah at least appears to be taking as of now. And there are a lot of things to like about this, okay? The pro model of where college athletics is mandates, I think, athletic directors and university presidents to look at current and former pro coaches, maybe in a way that they wouldn't prior to, because I think the redeeming thought in college basketball is, why would you leave the pros to come to college when the money's better, the lifestyle's better? But maybe that's changing a little bit, and certainly my guess would be now we fast forward 5 years later, and after Quinn Snyder left, Alex had 1 year left on his deal. So Alex stayed here to coach with Will Hardy for 1 year, but I don't think that was ever going to last long term because, and I mentioned this earlier, I viewed Quinn wanting to keep Alex as his lead assistant as a real kind of feather in Alex's cap and kind of a statement to how highly respected Alex Jensen is. Quinn did not have to keep anybody, and he didn't keep a lot of people, quite frankly. Brought in some of his own staff, some of that staff. A lot of that staff is actually in Atlanta with Quinn Snyder. But Quinn wanted to keep Alex. He said, no, you're my guy. You're the lead assistant. So I always viewed that as a real statement because I respect Quinn Snyder a lot. Think he's a really smart dude. And he is a guy that doesn't make any decision without a lot of thought, with a lot of processing. And he wants to make sure every person around him is in the right seat to give his team the best chance to be as good as they can be. So keeping Alex as lead assistant, I think that was a really, really big deal. He coached for the Jazz for 10 years. As we've talked about, he was the G League Coach of the Year. That's not an easy thing to do. And he is as close to a Majerus disciple as you're going to find. He coached next to Rick. And Rick often talked about, we'll have to get, as this news continues to kind of unfold, and as soon as it becomes official, we'll have to get some of his old teammates on. I know a lot of those guys. I was in school with them, like Britton Johnson. And a lot of them had these crazy stories about how Rick Majerus would essentially dress down all of his players besides Alex. And besides Andre, too. Those were like the two players. And Rick often talked about how Alex was the smartest player that he ever coached. And he often talked about how Alex was going to make a great coach in his own right, and that's probably why I hired him. After Alex was done with his professional career overseas, he played overseas for about 7 years and, always played pro basketball, of course, with the hopes of one day maybe making it to the NBA. As soon as he was done in 2007, he took the job with Rick in St. Louis as an assistant coach. A couple years at Canton Charge as the head coach, as we referenced, G League Coach of the Year. Then landed with the Jazz, and after Quinn left, Alex with 1 year left on his deal, so Will Hardy and the Utah Jazz, it kind of felt like, hey, you've got a year left on the deal. You're highly respected. Why don't you hang out? Will obviously, was not one that was going to keep Alex around. So as soon as Alex and the Jazz parted ways, he joined the Dallas Mavericks as an assistant coach under Jason Kidd. For whatever reason, the Dallas Mavericks, they did sign Jason Kidd to an extension. They did not sign their assistant coaches to an extension. So Alex's deal is up at the end of this year. And I have to imagine there's some motivation in that direction to figure out what's next. Because, again, he has a wife and a bunch of young daughters that, obviously need to be taken care of. So nothing official as of yet, but everybody who's reporting on this story They're reporting the very same thing. It appears imminent that Alex Jensen will be here as the head coach of the Utah men's basketball program. And just the ability to have, and also having the cachet and the credibility, as Kevin Young has, to tell A.J. DeBanza, oh, your favorite player is Kevin Durant. Well, guess what? I coached him. Oh, your favorite player is Devin Booker. Guess what? I coached him. Oh, you love Chris Paul. Guess what? I coached him. Well, Alex Jensen has a list that doesn't just rival Kevin's list, but it might be better with Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, Donovan Mitchell, Gordon Hayward, Rudy Gobert. We're talking about champions. We're talking about all-stars. We're talking about generationally special players that Alex worked with. And that cachet is important because when it comes to the cutthroat world of recruiting and transfer portal, number one, money talks. And I will be curious to find out as this story manifests and we actually kind of get the truth of exactly how it went down. I'll be curious to what sort of assurances Alex asked for. Because remember, make no mistake, it's not like Alex is on a street corner with a sign that says, we'll coach for food. He doesn't necessarily need the Utah coaching job. But if he wants the Utah coaching job, then ultimately I'm quite sure he would have made it very crystal clear that certain things have to be in place, namely the economic infrastructure of your program, the economic infrastructure of your basketball program, of the athletic department. Some fun news broke earlier today that a $14 million estate gift has been left to the University of Utah athletic program for the Crimson Club Legacy Society. It's a legacy gift from an anonymous donor that will form an endowment to support Utah's women's sports program. So that's a really cool thing that broke a little bit earlier. What does it mean? Not that piece of information specifically, but ultimately where are we at from a macro standpoint, from a 30,000-foot view standpoint of the current health of the Crimson Collective? And if you're looking down south and look, if you have the opportunity to sign the number one player in the country, you're going to pay him whatever you got to pay him. But if Brigham Young is paying $7 million for 5 months of A.J. DeBanza, that's probably just an outlier, probably just a unicorn. But the reports are Cannon Catchings and Yegor Demon, the two, certainly Yegor is going to be a pro. And Cannon, in spurts, he was really good against Arizona, has shown a lot of ability, and he's a long, young kid that can really shoot it. The reports are those two are seven-figure kids, right? And you wonder why the football program is a little bit disenfranchised down there as a result of maybe unequal economic investment. That's the type of money you have to keep up in the Big 12, to keep up in NCAA athletics, to keep up in college basketball and college football. So I'm sure Alex, who is a soft-spoken but smart guy, do not mistake. Like if Alex gets the job, he will not be a Jim Boylan at halftime cheerleader at a football game screaming, go Utes, to try to get you to buy tickets. He's not going to be like this, even the same type of energy Craig Smith has day in and day out. I'm not saying Alex doesn't have energy. He doesn't express it as a front-facing manner of his. He's just more soft-spoken. He's just more introverted. But don't mistake that for anything other than just being an introspective person, because he's a very sharp guy. He's a very smart guy. He's a very good coach. And I'm sure he had a list of questions and a lot of boxes that he wanted checked before he decided to uproot his family and take this situation and take this opportunity that could be life-changing if it's the right move. And if you're a Utah basketball fan, if you're a Utah athletics fan, your hope is Alex takes this job for the long haul. You want the next iteration of a Rick Majerus. You want the basketball equivalent of a Kyle Whittingham. You want a guy that's going to be here for 20 years. And you want a guy that's going to be here and build this thing and play the long game. Alex is 48 years old. He's still very young. He's in his 40s. A lot older than I am, but he's still in his 40s. I mean, he's got a lot of coaching left. And by a lot, I mean 2 years. But this is a young coach, right, that could be around here for the long haul. And if we're honest, Utah has not had a long-term answer at the head coaching spot for the men's basketball program since Rick. That's just the bottom line. Everybody else has had moments. Everybody else has had some wins here or there. Ray Giacoletti had Andrew Bogut, and they had a team, I think, that went to the Sweet 16. Of course, Bogut was a Majerus recruit. Jim Boylan had a team that went to the NCAA tournament as a 5 seed. I think we all forget that with Luka Dircha. And I always want to say Aaron Neville, but he's a singer. It's Luke Neville, the big. And then Coach K, Larry Kraskovia, had a couple of really good teams, Kuz and DeLon and, of course, Jakob, but none of it lasted. None of it lasted consistently. And that's where you hope this thing changes. If it is Alex, is he able to build this thing up where every year, and Ken Pomeroy is going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. When Ken was in the studio about a month ago, he dropped something that, and I'm not saying he's wrong. Ken is as sharp as a college basketball mind as there is. But he said, you want to be making the tournament once every 3 or 4 years. And I'm not on board with that. I don't want to accept that as the reality. I want Utah basketball to be back in the tournament every single year, not just back in the tournament every single year, but winning games. I mean, for a basketball market that has been just a little bit disenfranchised with their college basketball program, I can promise you what will change it, certainly for the student body up there. If you're a student at the U, first of all, listening to this show at your age, that's wild. Second of all, experiencing the basketball team going to the tournament and winning games will change the way you view that program because it is awesome. It is so fun. I can remember watching with my peers when I was a student up there, fraternity house, whatever, watching the NCAA tournament and watching our teams advance. It's how we planned our week. It's how we planned our social calendar. Where the basketball team plays tonight. Well, where are we going to watch it? All right, let's go. Let's grab some pizza. Let's go to the house. Let's go watch it, whatever. Nothing will change the apathy towards Utah's basketball program quicker than a team that goes to the NCAA tournament and wins a few games. It is so fun. So while I do believe Alex and whoever else he decides to hire to fill out his bench will win the day and will win the presser and will incite the community instantly, I also believe he is the type that will approach it the right way to build it up long term and make sure that he doesn't only have incremental success, and it isn't just a 1 year off type thing. Now, that's going to take some time, and I don't care if it's Alex Jensen or Rick Majerus himself resurrected. I don't think it's realistic to expect anything to turn around immediately. And I'm sorry to say that because I said the same thing after Craig took over from Larry. Like, this is going to be a project that's going to take 2, 3, 4 years. Now, the caveat there is a bit of a change in the landscape of how you can build a roster in college basketball. And there are several programs. One example is St. John's and Rick Pitino, who coached in the NBA. And they have a guard named Davon Smith, who played some basketball here last year. If you have NIL resources, if your economic infrastructure surrounding your program is sound, and you have the ability to offer top shelf talent, top money to come play for you, then you have the cachet of NBA guys on your bench. You can get this thing ticking pretty quick. I just don't know that it's realistic to get it turned around right away. So we'll see when the announcement is made. According to two very credible national college basketball news breakers, Jeff Goodman and John Rothstein, this is imminent. According to our very own Sean O'Connell, it's also imminent. And only time will tell because these things can be a little bit complex. You know, as far as the finances go, as far as the timing goes, does Dallas want him to finish off the year? I doubt it now. Doesn't matter who's on the Dallas Maverick coaching bench. They're without Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, and they just traded Luka. I wonder how much of the Mavericks' chaos comes into play here for Alex. Because I would completely get it. Like, if you have Luka at the age of 25, you have a chance to be an NBA champion multiple times before he's retired. But Nico Harrison blew that team up. The player he traded for is hurt, and the star that was supposed to step in as the leader just tore his ACL. And by the way, I think there's tornadoes in Dallas right now. All of this seems to indicate there are signs, maybe some signs that are of a power of our greater understanding, that are helping Alex and his wife, Natalie, make the decision to relocate here to Salt Lake City. I think it would be a grand slam hire. I think this is the direction Mark Harlan and Taylor Randall should go. And everybody who's reporting on this, they're all reporting the same thing, that Alex Jensen appears to be high speed ahead back here to Salt Lake City to take the job as the head coach for the Utah men's basketball program. Speaking of the Utah men's basketball program, there's a game tonight. Did you guys know that? West Virginia's in town. Text Utes right now to 33986 for a chance to win tickets to the game so you can go support these young men. Final home game for Utah Hoops tonight against West Virginia. Your chance to win tickets, text Utes to 33986 for a chance to win Utah men's basketball tickets right here on ESPN 700. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Aaron Falk from the Salt Lake Tribune joins us coming up next. Then Ken Pomeroy will join us as well to preview some games tonight. I talked to both of these gentlemen about the news that Alex Jensen. Maybe Alex Smith would be an assistant. Not a bad thing. But the news that Alex Jensen apparently is high speed ahead to be back here in Salt Lake to take over the basketball program. So 2 hours down, 2 hours to go on a Tuesday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we got Ken Pomeroy on the show coming up in a bit. It's a busy night in local college basketball. BYU is in Ames to take on Iowa State. Utah hosts West Virginia. Senior night for these Utes. Head on down and say hello. Started the show off today with Sarah Todd. Tim McMahon joined us as well. Time now for our somewhat consistent visit, although it's been a minute since the editor of the sports section of the Salt Lake Tribune graced us with his presence. Aaron Falk, hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, Spencer?
I'm well. Can you explain yourself as to why it's been a number of months since you've graced us with your presence?
Seasonal affect disorder, probably.
All right. Okay, fair enough. All right, so there's some breaking news-ish. We're still waiting for an official announcement, but now we've got Jeff Goodman and John Rothstein, two of the college basketball newsbreakers, in addition to our very own Sean O'Connell, reporting that Alex Jensen is going to be the next head coach of the Utah men's basketball program. I wonder, from a Trib standpoint, when do you guys wait to break things like this? What's the process over the Tribune?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if it's, if we have it from at least one and hopefully two solid sources, we go through a process and we try not to use unnamed sources very often, but if that's the case, my reporters would run that up to me and we would clear that. But I'm seeing the same thing you are right now with Rothstein. It does seem like that's the direction things are heading. So at the moment, we're waiting with everybody else.
So, Aaron, as a man around town and a local, not just a newsbreaker and an editor, what do you make of the potential of Alex taking over? It's been interesting, and we've talked about it, of course, on the show since last Monday after the news came down that Craig was let go. If we're honest, man, they have not had a consistent coach. They've not made the right hire since Rick left. I mean, Ray Giacoletti, Jim Boylan, Larry Kraskowiak, they all had moments. They all had teams that went to the NCAA tournament. And, Craig never made the tournament, but it looked like there was some incremental progress. So this is a basketball community that is waiting for a hire that can build this thing back up consistently as opposed to moments in time. Do you think Alex is the guy that can do that for this basketball town?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of potential here, and obviously his name's been floated before, when Craig got the job 4 years ago, and at that point, Alex's NBA head coaching potential seemed greater than it turned out to be, and so maybe that window closes a little bit, and he's a little bit older and more settled, and maybe there's a little bit more money on the line, and this looks more intriguing, but. I think there's, for a few different reasons. I mean, one, you look at that arena and, the people that are there, a huge number of them are people that are there because they have some memory of those running Utes, those Majerus running Utes, right? And what Alex and Doliak and Britton Johnson and those guys did. And they're looking to recreate that, right? And so if you're Mark Harlan and you're trying to turn this program around, you need money to do that. And the only way you're going to get more money, there are two paths, right? One, to be a consistent winner. That's going to take time. And then the other one is to find somebody who can tap into that culture, that nostalgia, those memories, and some old-time donors and try to turn this thing faster. And I think Alex, for just for what he had done, is a tremendous asset there. And then two, I got to know Alex pretty well when I worked for the Utah Jazz, and got to spend some time with him in some different settings. A long time in the NBA bubble. I went to France with Alex and Rudy Gobert, and to watch him, not just the work that he did, obviously on the court, and you look at Rudy's career, and obviously then that Alex Jensen can develop players from raw talent into someone who is elite, and so that bodes well for you as a college program. But beyond that, just to see the way that he fostered and maintained that relationship with somebody who's, let's be honest, a bit quirky, probably had some interesting asks and needs, and the way that he was able to do that, I think bodes really well for Alex to be someone who can meet people where they are and be a recruiter, which is the one thing that he hasn't done for quite a while, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I wanted to follow up. I'm glad you referenced the second part of your answer because I was going to refer to your time with the Jazz and getting to know him a little bit. And it's interesting, Aaron. I've known Alex for a long time, and he's very introspective. He's quiet. Don't mistake his quiet nature for anything other than being a little bit introverted. But he's very smart. He's a very good basketball coach, and he kind of made a name for himself with the Gobert stuff, right? Like, ultimately, Rudy's growth and evolution, a lot of the credit simply goes to Gobert. But we all watched Rudy as a rookie, and I'll be honest, I'm like, this is not going to work. He just looked uncoordinated. He looked lanky. And again, the bulk of the credit goes to Gobert. But what did you see as far as Alex's work with not just Rudy, Favors, Cantor, like that, the big man group, but of course, Rudy's success is kind of Alex's success story as well. Tell me what you saw with the developmental side of him while you were with the Jazz.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Alex knows the game and knows the fundamentals and has the ability to teach that. But then I think like I said, just to meet somebody where they are and the amount of time that Rudy wants to put in before and after, Alex is there and ready to grind with you to deal with some obvious difficult things, whether it was relationship with Donovan or challenges with being sent to the G League and back, and to be able to kind of navigate those things. I mean, Alex was there for him, and he knew, that's why this trip to France stands out. I mean, he knew how important it was to Rudy for people to see him and where he was from and to where he got to. And so I think, just being able to put all of that together makes sense. And then, you're right. A lot of this is on Rudy for, being a physical freak and someone who did have drive to get better and to be able to put that package together. But the other thing I would point to is Alex came up under Majerus, coached and worked with Majerus, and then spent a long time with Quinn Snyder. And if you can deal with those types of demanding figures and keep their respect and stay on their staff, I think that speaks to your talent as well.
Good point, because I think a lot of folks may not know that Alex was on the staff under Ty Corbin, and Quinn came and took over, and he got rid of a lot of people, Aaron, as you know. And I always viewed the fact that Quinn Snyder, who doesn't do anything accidentally and is very organized and maniacal and intentional with decision-making, I always viewed the fact that he kept Alex on staff, and not just on staff, but made him his lead assistant for his entire 9 years here, a real testament to the type of coach and person Alex is.
100%. I mean, you're spot on. That first year, maybe you have Quinn Snyder coming into a new situation, and you have a front office ownership group that hey, says, we've got some assistants here. We want you to try to work some things out, right? Year two, Quinn's able to bring in his own guys, and Alex stays. That says everything you need to know.
100%. Let me ask you this. Do we overstate, and it's hard to kind of be analogous with Utah and BYU with this dynamic, because BYU is a little bit different. It's more unique where, Tom Homo steps down and the president, Shane Reese, talks about, we need a BYU guy. We're going to get a tried and true BYU guy that understands BYU, that loves BYU. Then, of course, there's the religiosity. He even talked openly that he needs to love Jesus, all those things that BYU brings. Do we overstate the for a Ute when it comes to these types of things? Or do you think it's a real thing? Like Josh Grant joined the show last week and was very honest, salient, and forthcoming about his opinion that it does need to be somebody that understands this community. What do you think about that?
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think it's maybe overblown in the sense that we've seen, we've seen people from the outside. I mean, we've talked about, Quinn, and obviously it's a different situation, but people from the outside can come in and figure it out and become beloved within the community, right? It takes winning. But I go back to, fundraising as the reason I think that it has to be a Ute right now, because they're not going to bring in somebody, if you go around and you look at, the people that are going to make the leap and come be head coach of the University of Utah men's basketball program, you're probably dealing with a lot of, high achieving mid-major guys, or maybe middle achieving power four guys, or, there are some fringe like NBA types. You go to the Stars and grab Wojciechowski or whatever, right? But that's just not going to excite a donor base in instantly, and this does. And I think that's the number one thing. So you have a guy who checks a lot of boxes, like we've talked about. It is nice that he knows the culture and wants to put his heart into it, because I do think that's a meaningful thing that you can't replicate. But at the end of the day, money is going to make this thing go, and that good feeling of seeing Alex Jensen with a hand extended is going to bring in more money to the University of Utah.
Family on three?
Absolutely. 1, 2, 3.
Love it. So I wonder, and look, we've got to be clear, none of this is official yet, but I trust Sean, I trust Goodman, I trust Rothstein, and everybody who's reported on this has reported that it is Alex. But you reference, and I've been talking about this a ton, whether it's Alex Jensen or the ghost of Rick Majerus or Richard Pitino or whoever it is going to ask Mark and probably President Randall, what do the economics of your program look like? What is the financial infrastructure of Utah basketball right now? And, whether it's Utah basketball or Utah football or whatever it is, and we have House versus NCAA, we're high speed ahead to the $20 million number where you can start paying players. But do you have any understanding over the Salt Lake Tribune of the current condition of the Crimson Collective and whether or not the football program, the basketball program is being supported financially the way it needs to be?
Yeah. So, the last reporting that we had on this was, going into this year, the basketball program had about 2.5, maybe a little bit more in NIL money. And football was, I think, and I could be wrong, somewhere in the 6 to 7-ish range. And everything we've heard is, yes, we're looking for more. We will have more, and the hope is to reach that $20 million revenue share max. And then how you allocate that, probably it's 60, 70%, 70% to football, 20% to basketball, figure it out the rest of the way. Right. And so, I think Utah's, looking at the Big 12, maybe high middle of the Big 12. One of the problems with this is it's so hard to know. You see the big numbers that flash for a certain player or a certain program. There's just no public accounting of it that has to happen. And so right now it still feels like everybody wants to put their best foot forward and make themselves look better. And then everyone else is just feeling like we don't have enough because all you can do is hunger for more, right? Because you're not sure what everyone else has. And so I think they're, what we were told, on the record was $2.5 million for the basketball team this year. You look around the Big 12, obviously there are guys that splash that for a single player. So I think you've got to get to that, 3.5, 4 relatively quickly. And I think that's where that, again, going back to it, money matters. Alex Jensen should be the guy that can help you get there.
And we'll see what the bench looks like next to him. Andre Miller talked about as an assistant coach, and we'll end on this. Let's operate off the hypothetical that Alex gets the job and they hire Andre, and then we'll see what they do to fill out the bench. That feels like it's certainly, into your earlier point about fundraising, that would certainly win the day. That would certainly win the press conference. Yeah, I mean, the way I anticipate this going down, if it does, as soon as that announcement is made, my guess is that ticket office receives a lot of calls for season ticket deposits. And Aaron, let's call it how it is, man. Like whether it was Craig or Larry or Jim before him, it's been a number of years since that building has been full consistently. And if you're Coach Witt, you can bring in a recruit on a Saturday night and you can just simply say, do you want to be part of this? Because Rice Eccles on a Saturday night, when it's a great home environment, is really attractive. And the Huntsman hasn't been that for a while. So do you think, at least in the moment, in a vacuum, that would motivate a lot of people to buy tickets right away if this is the announcement we get?
Oh, I definitely think so. I think you go on a fundraising run, you go on a ticket sales run that you haven't really enjoyed in quite a while, and And then, basketball, unlike football, it's a roster that's small enough that you can turn, and there's so much turnover, you can turn a ship around pretty quickly, and that's got to be your hope for sure.
All right, moving off, let's talk about some stories you guys have uncovered and written over the trib. And I thought our guy Kevin Reynolds, with some really good reporting about the BYU football NIL collective situation and the meeting that was held prior to the last season, where 2 BYU starters outlined this situation where the NIL was cut quite a bit as a result of a less than stellar year one in the Big 12. And then, equal time, you talk to some of the people at the Royal Blue Collective, and they're trying to step up. And, this is an interesting story. And, of course, whenever you guys decide to go with something like this, you take a number of different things into account and talk to a number of different people. And, of course, BYU fans like to use the internet to feel brave, so they've come at you quite a bit. But give us a little background, how the story kind of came about and how you guys decided to go about your reporting.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kevin Reynolds, our BYU beat writer, just a tremendously talented young man who's come in from Texas, and over the last 3 years, I mean, developed a foothold in the athletics department down there and the locker room, and is, I think, kind of made a name for himself as someone who's willing to hear people out and tell their stories, and like we talked about earlier in terms of we prefer not to use an anonymous source if at all possible. And here's a situation where through relationships developed over the course of a season, working a beat, and being there and being perceived as someone who's talented and good at his job, developed some relationship with players and was able to tell their story. And obviously, I think there are going to be people on that roster who did get some pay bumps or don't see it that way or frustrated. But here is the account of 2 young men on the record who say that, and Royal Blue Collective comes in and says, yes, we did cut, for certain players. Maybe it wasn't the 80% that some people said. They weren't able to give us a firm number on what that was. And at the same time, they say, hey, we're gonna up our numbers this year. We'll spend more in 2025 than we did in 2024. And it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's one of those things where, if you're winning, you start the season and every Ute fan is feeling like we're on top of the world. We're gonna run through this conference, and then BYU outperforms and feels like, oh, the Cougars must have had everything right NIL wise, and Utah's in disarray or whatever. And the truth is somewhere in the middle there.
As it always is, of course, as it always is. All right, one quick Jazz question here, because, again, we kind of all know what time it is, and no one is under any illusion as far as what they've tried to do all year. You've got a really good Jazz reporter and our guy Andy, Andy Larson. What have been – see, it's a challenging thing, whether you're in this space as a sports talk radio host to try to cover our local NBA team. And, of course, the Jazz have always been the big dog here. We are a basketball city. We are a basketball market. But when the deal is what the deal is, it's tough on a fan base. It's a weird kind of infrastructure as far as NBA basketball right now, where, the incentive structure is such where about a third of the league has fan bases every year that has to outwardly cheer for them to lose in order to get a great draft pick, in order to get, things back on track. What have been the biggest challenges in covering a team that is in year 3 of a rebuild that, quite frankly, does not have a light at the end of the tunnel yet?
Yeah, I think it is difficult to know how to strike that balance, right, of trying to provide a level of criticism, and I mean that so hopefully constructively, in terms of the goal of once they throw the ball up is to win. Well, that's not the goal here, but can we be critical of a performance, if it doesn't meet a muster, maybe, look at the last couple of games, right? And some of Will Hardy's comments, right? And, or does none of that matter because everybody knows what the end goal is here, right? And so trying to strike that balance of, when do you say, hey, let's talk basketball, and this wasn't very good, and when do you say it doesn't really matter that the basketball's not very good because that's not the point. And so, I mean, it's a tightrope that you walk, and I don't think you please everybody all the time, but I think Andy's picked his spots and tried to, say, come at performance as he did last night, when maybe you're trying to speak to a bigger picture issue, not necessarily that it's a poor performance, and it's going to cost the Jazz some great thing this year, but how does it speak to the quality of the players in the locker room now, and maybe what that projects going forward, and trying to look at it through that lens. And then the other difficult thing is just like, how do you keep people engaged and caring? And, I think we're kind of at a point in the season where everybody knows what's up, and you've got the people on the wagon who have been on the wagon all along, and everyone else is just waiting for the ping pong balls.
So I wonder how the engagement has been. We saw some data a couple weeks ago that the local TV ratings for the Jazz have tanked when it was Quinn and Rudy and Donovan and that great run for about 5 years. I know for a couple of years local TV ratings in pro basketball went like this: 1 Golden State, 2 Utah. I know that was at least a couple of years. And the Jazz, from what I read, have the 3rd worst drop in local TV interest. Now, I've been to maybe 10 games, and the building's still full. I have my dashboard, and Jazz interviews are not downloaded the way that they typically are. So the engagement on the media side seems to be a little bit down. How is it over at the Trib when you guys write about the Jazz now?
Yeah, I mean, for sure down relative to a good year. And, I think that's just to be expected. I mean, people have so many options for how they spend their time and their money and where they put their energy. And if you don't feel that the sports team is giving it back to you, I think it's completely reasonable that you're not invested in how Isaiah Collier is doing today, right? Like, I think that makes sense to me as a human being. There's diehards and Andy's triple team, which he does after every game, gets, we've got it as a newsletter. It goes straight to your email inbox, and that gets read reasonably well by a group of diehard Utah Jazz fans who are extremely invested in the things we talked about. How does Isaiah Collier factor into the next good Jazz team? What's how to explain sort of Lauri Markkanen's dip in numbers this year, and should you be concerned? People that really care about that. But my parents, who will certainly care about the Jazz when there's a playoff push happening, or my friends who there are a lot of people out there who are Jazz fans who know nobody on this roster, right? And they consider themselves Jazz fans, but they're not going to put any time into it until they're getting something back from the franchise. And that's just going to mean everybody's numbers are down.
Friend of the program, Belle Frazier, has been very impressive. Good hire by you. As the Utah Hockey Club continues their chase towards the wild card, and they're right in the mix. What's it been like to learn this sport for the first time, and what sort of interest are you receiving from the community when you guys cover the hockey club?
Yeah, I think it truly has been a learning experience for me, and Belle has been honestly as much of a resource for me as anything. And so appreciate her knowledge and her passion for the game. I think there are a lot of barriers to entry to become an NHL fan, certainly an NHL diehard. It's there are rules you don't understand. It doesn't get talked about on SportsCenter with any regularity. There is again there are diehards, but it is relatively niche. And so I think we're looking at a situation where a playoff appearance maybe helps jumpstart a generation of hockey fans. But I think that's something that's going to take a little bit to get going, if it does, because right now people are feeling it out. People enjoy going to the games. They care about what this team might be named someday. I don't think your average person at a sports bar, even with a game on, is going to know who Clayton Keller is. And that's going to take some time.
All right, buddy, before I say you loose, question about the lads, of course. You've been writing about the lads. Ultimately, first of all, Emeka Anelli, captain, shout out. Is Nate Bench a soccer genius? Because he saw this talent before any of us, and now he's the captain. So I want you to address that. Then secondly, what's fair to say about a team that allegedly pocketed between 15 and 17 mil after a number of different transactions, and they have not reinvested that into the talent just yet?
I think, to answer your first question, Nate Bench, absolutely soccer savant.
Okay.
If he doesn't, he needs an office in Harriman.
He does.
That's all I'm going to say.
No doubt.
What's fair to say? I'd be curious to know the timing of the Chicho Arango ask and how close that might have been to the start of the season, and maybe how much runway they would have had to find a high-level replacement, right? Because I do think that they brought in some players that they knew were not at that level. Even our disgruntled Brazilian friend who was going to basically be an Anderson Julio replacement was not going to be a Chicho Arango replacement, right? And so I would be very curious to know how much time they had to fix that problem. And if it was a lot of time, I can understand some of the frustration. If it was a little bit of time, you maybe the window is just not long enough to get a deal done. And scouting and making transfers in the international football world seems to be absolutely an insane thing to try to accomplish, certainly in short order. And so I need to know that before really passing judgment. That being said, it's a really long season. You look at what RSL did last year, and they were great in the beginning, and they stunk at the end, and none of those fans were very happy. And so if they can get somebody in the second window, and they're within striking distance, and they can erase the memory of maybe a lackluster first half with a strong second and a playoff win, it's probably better.
Congratulations in order to our guy, Kevin Reynolds. And how about my man, Gordon Monson, dusting off the fastball, winning some APSE awards? Yeah?
I appreciate it, yes. APSE, Associated Press Sports Editors. It's probably our biggest sports writer award showcase out there nationwide. We compete in the B division, so just below the New York Times and ESPN and all that. We're competing with the Oregonian, San Antonio, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. These are very good sports sections if you're not perusing random cities' newspapers. And so to be in that group, we're honored, and we appreciate everybody who reads and subscribes, and even to all my haters, you motivate me every day.
Shout out to the haters. sltrib.com. Aaron, I'm relieved that you're still allowed to come on the show, because I'm not sure you're allowed to hang out with me. But thanks for your time today, okay?
Anytime, brother.
Aaron Falk, the editor of the Salt Lake Tribune. Appreciate his time. sltrib.com. Support our friends over the Trib. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Coming up on the other side, we'll preview tonight's college basketball action, and we'll also get the thoughts of Ken Pomeroy on the news that looks like Alex Jensen is on his way to Utah to coach the Utes. Then we'll move into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. Don't forget pregame coverage for Utah, West Virginia tonight at 6:30 with our guy Riles. And, of course, Sean Mooney. Tip-off at 7 o'clock. Tuesday Drive rolls on the other side right here on ESPN 700. Big night in the world of college basketball, both locally and nationally. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program. We're going to hand it over to Bill Riley and Sean Mooney for pregame coverage of Utah men's hoops tonight as they take on West Virginia at the Huntsman Center. BYU is in Ames to take on Iowa State. Our next guest, the seer of college basketball, the smartest college basketball guy around, good enough to join us with not a lot of notice on a Tuesday. Ken Pomeroy. Happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
Hey, Spence. I'm doing great. Looking forward to the upcoming Madness series. We get into single elimination basketball.
Yes, indeed. It's a great time of year. And Ken, obviously this news is not finalized, but I do have to get your take on the reports from college basketball newsbreakers like Rothstein and Goodman as well. Our very own Sean O'Connell also reporting that it appears Alex Smith is in line to be the next head coach of the University of Utah. I know you know Alex well. Should this become the deal and should this become official, what's your thought on the fit?
I think it's a great fit, assuming you mean Alex Jensen and not Alex Smith.
Did I say Alex Smith again? I've done that 4 times on the show. Alex Jensen. Yes, Alex Jensen.
That's okay. I mean, it's, obviously the ties are strong and the loyalty is there. And I think, the modern game, there's probably less difference between running or assisting in an NBA program and a college program at this point. So yeah, it'll be great to have Alex back up on the hill and looking forward to a new era of Utes basketball. Hopefully it goes well. I mean, we were, when Craig Smith was hired, we thought that was the right hire too. And he checked all the boxes and ultimately it didn't quite work out. So you never know about these things, but it does seem like Alex is the right choice at this point.
Based off of the success of Kevin Young and the BYU basketball program, once upon a time, I cannot believe I said Alex Smith again. I've said that like 5 times today. Once upon a time, the idea of an Alex Jensen or a guy like Kevin leaving the pros for college seemed like kind of a silly thing. Do you think we're going to see more of this as a result of the change to the sport where, players can kind of come and go in a way they couldn't prior to? And maybe Alex has done his calculation, and once upon a time, I thought he'd be an NBA head coach. I'm surprised that he never got that opportunity. Maybe he still will. He's 48 years old. But do you think the success of what Brigham Young has been able to do by hiring essentially an entirely pro staff, is that something we're going to start seeing maybe more commonplace in college hoops?
Possibly. I think, if you can get the deal worked the right way, for sure. And like you said, there's still probably a path for Alex to, if he has success here, to jump back to the NBA if he wants. But yeah, I mean, especially if you can kind of detach yourself maybe from the recruiting part of it. If you have a separate general manager that we're seeing a lot of schools go to now that can kind of organize the recruiting aspect of things. I think that's always the drawback of coaching at the college level is the amount of work you have to do to get players, whereas you're really not doing that much work as a assistant coach or a head coach in the NBA. So as we head to that more of that kind of a model, I think it does become a more appealing job for some of these guys in the NBA who realize that, hey, there's only 30 head coaching jobs in the NBA. So even if you are qualified to be an NBA head coach, really hard to get one. You look at the openings that happen in the NBA every year, and a lot of those openings end up going to guys who have already been head coaches. So it's just really tough to break in at that level. And so maybe that's factored into the calculus here for Alex wanting to come back to the college level.
Tell me your thoughts when you heard the news that Craig had been let go. And, ultimately, Craig is very young. I think he has a lot of coaching ahead of him. And also the thoughts on, because they were picked to finish last in the conference, and they might finish, 8, 9, 10. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. There's a case to be made, Ken, that he actually did a pretty good job. And in my opinion, he just didn't have the talent that a lot of his peers did in the Big 12. So what are your thoughts on Mark Harlan deciding to let Craig go?
I think he summed it up pretty well there. It wasn't really surprising that he was let go. I mean, the program had kind of stagnated, and as you mentioned, that there may be, and there are reasons for that outside of Craig Smith's coaching ability. I mean, Craig Smith had succeeded at multiple previous stops, so it's not like he just suddenly forgot how to coach. And as you mentioned, they also probably overachieved this year given the roster. They're finishing the season pretty strong. The timing was really what was surprising. You come off of the wins against Kansas and Kansas State, and it was almost like, administration was just waiting for the next loss to let him go, and they didn't get that against Kansas or Kansas State, so it happened after the UCF game. But Craig, he's gonna get another head coaching job somewhere. It seems like fairly obvious that will happen. It might be at a lower level, but Craig can still coach, and he's always a great personality, a great representative of your program. Not that matters if you can't win, but I think if he goes to another program, maybe at a slightly lower conference that has better resources at its level, I think there's no reason for him not to be successful again. It kind of reminds me of the Tim Miles situation. Obviously, those two guys are connected from previous years working together, but Tim Miles gets fired at Nebraska. He ends up at San Jose State pretty quickly, and Craig Smith, I think, is going to have that opportunity as well.
All right, moving off the coaching news, there is a Utah basketball game tonight, and I'm sure it's going to be tough for Coach Eilert to keep this team focused. And this is a group of young men that have been through a lot over the past couple of weeks, certainly losing their head coach, and they were able to get a win against a very depleted Arizona State team. Actually, before we get to West Virginia, Bobby Hurley, is he in trouble when it comes to his job? And why are they rolling around with like 5 scholarship players right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. He may be in trouble. I mean, it's he's found the similar kind of trajectory as Craig Smith did, except Bobby Hurley's done it over the course of 10 years at Arizona State. So, they suffer from the same issues that other programs suffer from, where they don't have the resources necessarily to compete with the better schools in the league. That's holding Bobby Hurley back a bit, but even so, you would wonder why they would continue on with Bobby Hurley, given the complete lack of recent success. And I don't know why they don't have more scholarship players to lean on. This seems to be been an issue. It's not just the first time it's happened at Arizona State, where they've kind of gotten to the end of the season and gotten beat up with some injuries and whatnot, and just don't have the depth to roll out a 7 or 8 man rotation by the end of the year. So I don't know what's going on with that either, but obviously that's a program that is in a tailspin this year. And I'm not an insider on coaching news, Spence, but it would seem to be the time for Arizona State to make a change.
So West Virginia in town tonight. West Virginia beat Iowa State back at the beginning of Big 12 play. They also beat Kansas, but I guess everybody's beat Kansas. They also beat Arizona. They have like randomly 3 really good wins. They got dog walked at the Marriott Center. BYU smoked them. And this is, I don't know, a sneaky big game because both these teams are 8-10 in Big 12 play. So, of course, you want to get the win and try to get the best seed you possibly can. Tell us what the Utes are up against tonight as West Virginia rolls into town.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, West Virginia is in the mix for an at-large bid still. So, this is going to be a big game for them. This is one they could really use what would probably be, one of those nice quad 1 wins because it is on the road. So that's a start. And West Virginia, speaking of head coaches that have done well, Darian DeVries in his first year, was really surprised. People across the country with the way West Virginia has performed this year. They were not expected to be a tournament team. They got to transfer Javon Small from Oklahoma State, who was really one of the best scorers in the league, 6'3" guard for them. And they play with outstanding defense. Their defense is ranked 15th in the country, and that's really what kind of has carried them this year, along with a pretty strong home court advantage. So that's the story on them. They also, Darian DeVries' son, Tucker DeVries, really is probably the best player on the roster, but he got injured early in the year and has not played and will not play the rest of the year. So just an incredible, coaching job, first of all. And it will be a challenge to score some points against this team. I mean, it's going to be a grinding, low-scoring game, probably played in the 60s tonight.
All right, BYU with a really big one tonight. But before we get to what BYU has in front of them when it comes to a big game against Iowa State tonight in Ames, let's just get your thoughts on the latest with what BYU's been able to do. They've won 6 straight basketball games. They've won 10 of their last 12. And, the West Virginia game, Ken, was interesting because they could not hit the broadside of a barn in the first half. They did not hit a three in the first half. They lit it up in the second, but a lot of it was paint points. A lot of it was Foose. And, now they find themselves after a win at McHale, following up the win against Kansas. I feel like certainly a lock for the tournament and potentially getting a top 4 seed, which gives you a double bye into the quarter. So before we get to tonight, what has gone so right for Kevin Young and his BYU basketball team as of late?
Well, you mentioned, being able to have a successful offense really without great 3-point shooting. This is a team that takes a lot of threes. They're 17th in the country in terms of the percentage of field goal attempts from 3-point range. They're 17th in the country from the number of points they get from 3-point range. So in one sense, the offense is, when it's really clicking, it's clicking with getting threes. But they're also top 5 in the country in terms of 2-point percentage. And that's huge. I mean, it's just a well-oiled offense right now. They don't necessarily do anything else great, but they can shoot it, and that spaces the floor. And, they obviously have 2 very effective big men in terms of Traore and Keba Keita, that allows them to finish, on lobs. And when you have that kind of space that is generated by the shooters, really hard for those, defenders on the wing to help on pick and roll. And so, BYU can still be effective even when they're not hitting threes. I think people are always going to respect the 3 in any game, whether they're going in or not, because they know that BYU pretty much has 3 or 4 knockdown shooters on the court at every time. So they're playing with house money tonight. I mean, this winning streak has, put them easily into the tournament. It's been impressive. It's turned the heads of a lot of people, and they're going to have probably their toughest task of the night, or this run tonight, in terms of going, to Iowa State on senior night. An Iowa State team that is finally fully healthy after some injuries and roster issues over the past month and a half. And so it's gonna be a really tough game for BYU. But as I said, they're playing with house money, and so even making this game competitive, I think, would still set them on a course for big expectations in the NCAA tournament.
Iowa State, an 8.5-point favorite. I thought that line was rather large. They had kind of a weird run where they lost a random game on the road at Oklahoma State. They got by Houston, but Houston's awesome. They just smoked Arizona. And, they went through the stretch, 3 straight L's, Arizona, K-State, Kansas, and lost to West Virginia, as we already outlined. So tell us about the Cyclones. What's BYU up against in a tough place to play, Ames, Iowa tonight?
Yeah, so the Cyclones, I mean, they've just been on this upward trajectory ever since TJ Otzelberger took over as the head coach 4 years ago. And, his expertise has been on the defensive end. Last year, they had the top defense in the country. They had the 52nd best offense. This year, they have the 9th best defense in the country and the 21st best offense. It's easily his best offense since he's been at Arizona State. Like the complete package is coming around. And he's been one of those coaches that's kind of magically figured out how to retain players. They're 35th in the country in terms of their continuity of minutes from last season. So they got guys back from last year. It's a very experienced team. And even though they still, their calling card is still on the defensive end, they can now score. And it's a little bit more of a, modern basketball offense in terms of being able to make some shots from distance. They're not a team that shoots a lot of threes, but they are 93rd in the country in terms of the number of threes they make. And so the offense is more of a well-rounded package, not necessarily led by any sort of stars or anything like that. It's just a bunch of solid guys who on any given night can could be the star. But for the most part, it's 5 to 7 guys who are willing to share and kind of more of an average role. And that's turned out to be a very effective formula for them.
Where do you see this game tonight in Ames kind of hinging? What does BYU need to do well in order, based off of what you know about both these two teams, in order to pull off, which according to Vegas would be a pretty sizable upset?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that Iowa State does well and really gets them going is forces turnovers. And it's not necessarily a BYU specialty to avoid them. I mean, we've talked, over the course of the year about Diego Demon and obviously his role in the offense. He handles the ball a lot. He triggers the offense. His passing instincts and his court vision, his reads are, I'd say, above average, certainly above average for a person of his age. But sometimes he has trouble executing on those reads, and he commits a fair amount of turnovers, and it's going to be important for BYU to limit those tonight. If you can force Iowa State to play in the half court, you're going to have a much better chance of limiting what they do offensively, and obviously limiting those turnovers will, obviously lead to more shots for BYU. I mean, that's really probably the story of the night is, can BYU get up as many shots as Iowa State? If they can do that, it'll be an interesting game. If Iowa State's looking at 10 or 15 more field goal attempts in the box score by the time the night is over, it's going to be a real struggle. So I'd say, watch Yegor and see, if he can limit the turnovers tonight, BYU could hang around here.
Let me revisit something we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And I think at the time, Ken, your answer was Arizona. I've got KenPom.com up, of course, proud subscriber for a number of years. And the second highest rated Big 12 team you have now is Texas Tech. If I asked you who the second best team in the Big 12 is right now, is it Texas Tech or is it somebody else?
It's probably Texas Tech. I mean, it's hard to really deny what they've done. It's a team that itself has been somewhat surprising. They were actually ranked 14th in my preseason ratings, but I believe unrated in the AP poll to start the season. So to some extent, they've been surprising, but they've answered all the questions pretty much over the course of the season. Obviously, their most recent game, they go to Kansas and get a victory, and I know everybody's beating Kansas, but Kansas is still a pretty decent team, especially at home. And for Texas Tech to go in there and get a win, says a lot. They themselves had some issues with injuries in terms of Chance McMillan and Darian Williams, a couple of their starters being out, but they got them all back for the Kansas game, and so they do look extremely tough. I mean, I still like Arizona. I like what they do as well, but Texas Tech is a very tough team, and I think as we've seen the bigger sample size this year, it's hard to deny their legitimate claim to being the second best team in the league.
I'll ask a similar question, but I'll ask it differently. Non-Houston Big 12 basketball team built to make an NCAA tournament run. Who's that?
I'd go with Arizona, I guess, is the next best choice. Just because I prefer teams that are a little better offensively. I mean, we talked about Iowa State, and they've improved their offense. But Arizona State seems to be more built around their offense, so potentially a better chance for a deeper run. But we're kind of splitting hairs here. I mean, I think both Arizona and Iowa State are teams that could go far. And I mean, I think there's an outside shot that BYU could be that team as well, just given the fact that their offense can be very explosive, and that upside I think is kind of intriguing. Although there's obviously a extremely long history of BYU not making deep tournament runs that would maybe cause you to have some reluctance to have them go deep in your bracket.
And that's where I wanted to go next. Are you more confident? Like BYU was a 6 seed last year. I think it was the Day Grant kid in Duquesne that got him round one. Jackson Robinson was like the only player making shots. But I thought BYU was built for something somewhat exciting last year. Do you think Kevin's team is better? Because right now, Lenardi has them as an 8 seed. They were a 6 seed last year. Is this team built for either a better Big 12 tournament run or an NCAA tournament run in your mind, Ken?
Well, they're probably more like a Big 12 tournament run is a little more likely just because there's, it's just such a quick event, and, you're almost just, there's not a lot of scouting, and you're just kind of reacting to what you know over the course of the season. And so I think that favors BYU more than a situation where there might be more detailed scouting and a few days to prepare for a team and kind of limit what BYU does offensively and try to make them do things they're not comfortable with. And certainly the memories of last year, I mean, they just linger, like they weren't just a 6 seed. They were one of the biggest favorites as a 6 seed in their first game in tournament history. And the game wasn't competitive. There was almost never a time in that game where you thought BYU was going to win. So that's a little concerning. And I think this team might be marginally better than last year's team, but I don't know that it's like that much different. So that is the concern. Clearly, there's some things you like you like the shooting, you like the fact that they're experienced and they're an older team, and you think all those things would lead towards success. I would also say you do not want to be on the 8 or 9 line in this year's tournament. I mean, the 1 seeds this year are as good as they've ever been, or certainly the last 15, 20 years. So that's an issue too. Like you get past that first game and all of a sudden you're, facing a historically like dominant Auburn or Duke or Houston. Like that's no bueno either.
Speaking of teams on the 8 or 9 line, we'll end with this. The Utah State Aggies, according to the bracketology, number 9 right now, according to Lenardi. You have them at 56 in the Ken Palm. And, as we've talked about, that basketball ethos up there, that basketball community up there, man, they coaches roll in and they seem to win. And I'm not taking anything away from any of them because every year is different. But tell me your thoughts on year 1, Jared Calhoun up in Logan.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's nothing to take away from what he's done up there and the season that they've had. I mean, it's been outstanding. Obviously losing the last couple of games is taking a little bit of shine off of that, especially the way they lost to Colorado State, really just not being competitive. And to a certain extent, the Boise State game was that way as well. I mean, it's a team this year. I mean, record aside, like the record's been great, but record aside, like their metrics have always kind of lagged behind their record and hinted at maybe some future struggles that, some of these other Mountain West teams might not experience, down the stretch. And we're starting to see that. They are pretty safe for the tournament. And I think, big picture, like rewind things back to mid-October, and a tournament bid is an excellent season. I mean, you just got to, anytime a first-year coach can come into this situation and almost completely turn over the roster. It wasn't 100% turnover like it was last year under Danny Sprinkle, but just under the circumstances, a great season for the Aggies. But the overall metrics are, as I said, lagging, and hopes of a deeper tournament run are, I don't want to say non-existent. Anybody can do it almost, but they're certainly a lot less likely than they are for BYU.
It is March, Ken, which means 2 things. My birthday, which I know you'll remember, and then, of course, college basketball. A lot of us have our attention on brackets and such, and you are the guy for this. Where can people go get their work? Is their families, coworkers, and friends are asking them to fill out brackets comprised of teams that they have not watched for 1 second all year?
They can go to kenpalm.com, Spence. That's where all the stats are. And if you want even more stats, you can pony up $24.95 for a 12-month subscription. So it'll get you set through the tournament and good all the way through March of next year, so you can enjoy all this good data for next college basketball season as well.
It's an excellent resource, Ken. Thank you, my friend. Happy March, and we'll chat soon.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
KenPalm.com. It's where you go. I've been a subscriber for years. It helps me do this job. Then it helps me fill out brackets, and it is very much worth your $24 at KenPalm.com is where you find them. Brought to you today by our friends at Ogden Clinic Hadley Dermatology. Now, here's the deal, okay? They've been a client on our radio show for about a month and a half now, and they're offering a bunch of deals and a menu of deals that you should take advantage of if any of these apply to you. I promise one of them does, and that is an offer that's kind of blown me away. It's a free skin consultation. So if you are like me, once the weather turns consistently, you will be out golfing probably every weekend, and if you can fit it in during the week, you're going to golf then. Maybe you're a mountain biker. Maybe you like to hike with a dog. Maybe you're a camper. I did not know this until our friends at Ogden Clinic Hadley Dermatology started working with us, but we lead the nation in skin cancer diagnosis per capita. So if you have not been checked out and you spend a lot of time in the sun, take advantage of their free skin consultation like right away. I go in every year. I don't get it for free, but Jason and Mike, they're good friends of mine, and they know how much I play golf. They know how much I'm out of the house. And so every year they say, you got to get in just to make sure you're good. And because I go in consistently to make sure nothing sneaks up on me, I'm good. Have you been checked? Well, if you haven't, take advantage of this. I'm laughing because it's such a crazy good deal by dialing 801-657-5664. That's 801-657-5664, 801-657-5664. You can also visit HadleyDermatology.com. In addition to the skin consultation, they're giving you a discount on Botox if your significant other is interested in that. Laser treatments. It's going to be pool season. Don't take your shirt off and look like a gorilla. Acne treatments for your teenager. hair loss treatments. And I know 3 friends that have been into Ogden Clinic Hadley Dermatology and have received successful hair loss treatments. Also, as Christine outlined when she was in studio last time, dry skin treatments. If you have excessive dry skin this time of year, just make sure it's not an underlying issue, okay? So it's 801-657-5664. That's 801-657-5664, or online at hadleydermatology.com. We're going to take a quick break, then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program. We're 90 minutes away from pregame coverage, Utah, West Virginia. Tip-off at 7 o'clock. Bill Riley, Sean Mooney, they've got the call for you. It's a drive on a Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time Tuesday afternoon, about 9 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. Your commute home on a Tuesday starts right now. It's been a little chilly. We had a little sun earlier. The clouds are settling in. We are preparing for a massive snowstorm up in the mountains coming up this weekend. Probably a little snow in the benches as well. The Ides of March, early March, inconsistent weather is kind of part of the deal if you're new here to Salt Lake City. First of all, welcome, and thanks for making this show part of your day. 5 o'clock hour of the program today is brought to you by friends at Burt Brothers. With over 30 years of experience and nearly 30 locations, Burt Brothers ASE certified technicians bring expertise and professionalism to every interaction. Talking industry-leading warranties and low-price tire guarantees. One-stop shop for reliable repairs and maintenance. From tires and alignments to fluids and brakes, offering a full range of automotive services tailored to meet your needs. Now offering value tire options such as Americus and Summit tires, starting at just $69 with warranties that go up to 70,000 miles. As one of the few AAA certified shops in Utah, Burt Brothers upholds the highest standards in automotive service. Stop by Burt Brothers or Tire Busters locations or schedule an appointment today to experience the trusted service that has made them a Utah favorite for over 3 decades. Burt Brothers doing it better since day one. We've got Utah men's basketball on the radio station tonight. 6:30 pregame coverage for the Utes. They're taking on West Virginia. BYU is in action taking on Iowa State in Ames. Don't forget 6:30 pregame coverage. Bill Riley, Sean Mooney, 7 o'clock tip time for the Utes. And Utah basketball can be seen tonight on ESPN+. Brigham Young's on ESPN too. And, of course, these two teams are going to play coming up on March the 8th. Regular season finale for both. Brigham Young gets the win tonight. High speed ahead to a 4 seed in the Big 12 tournament, which means they'll have a double bye into the quarters next Thursday with the Big 12 tournament, and kind of a sneaky big one for Utah. West Virginia still in the mix for an at-large bid as it pertains to the NCAA tournament. Both the Utes and West Virginia are 8-10 in conference. West Virginia 17-12. They've got some really good wins. Utah 16-13. West Virginia, a stout defensive team who got dog-walked at the Marriott Center not too long ago. But you look at their overall body of work, they've got a win over Arizona. They have a win over Gonzaga. They have a win over Kansas. At the time, Kansas was the number 7 team in the country. They have a win over Iowa State. It's been an odd kind of up and down situation for them with some bad losses. Like I said, they got smoked against BYU. So West Virginia, good basketball team. Once upon a time was in the top 25, but it's been a little bit of an up and down situation for them. So some really good college basketball on your television tonight. The Utah Jazz are off. The Jazz are on the road for the next 5 games after a 9-game homestand came to an end last night where they got smoked by Detroit. But we've got a little Warriors-Knicks tonight at Madison Square Garden. Stephen Curry at MSG in about 20 minutes from now. And some good NBA basketball tonight. Clippers, Suns, Pelicans, Lakers. See if the Lakers can continue their winning streak. But, of course, the news today is all about the reports, several reports, that Alex Jensen is high speed ahead to becoming the next head coach for the Utah men's basketball program. So the reports today have gone like this. John Rothstein, college basketball newsbreaker for CBS, earlier today, mid-morning, sends out, according to sources, Dallas Mavericks assistant coach Alex Jensen has emerged as the primary candidate for the head coaching vacancy at the University of Utah. No offer has been made yet, but he's at the top of the Utes list to replace Craig Smith, played under Rick Majerus and was an assistant with Utah Jazz. Our very own Sean O'Connell, just a few hours after that, reports that multiple sources have informed him that Alex is coming home to take the Utah men's basketball job. And then just about an hour ago, Jeff Goodman, who usually makes most of this stuff, sends the front runner for the Utah job is Dallas Mavericks assistant coach Alex Jensen. And a deal could be done in the next day or two, sources tell the Field of 68, who Jeff works for now. Jensen was on the 1998 Utes team, coached by Rick Majerus, that lost to Kentucky in the national championship game, and was a longtime assistant coach for the Utah Jazz, here for 10 years under both Ty Corbin and Quinn Snyder. So nothing is official as of yet. We have not heard anything from the school. I'll just kind of lean into the good reporting from everybody else. I don't know when this will go down, but literally everybody who reports on Utah athletics has reported the same thing, and that is Alex is the candidate. Alex is the lead guy. And according to Jeff Goodman, we could hear an announcement in the next day or two. Obviously, if you're Josh Eilert, your task is to keep these young men focused on the task at hand, which is a game tonight against West Virginia. your final game against Brigham Young. And then if they're able to win tonight and who knows, pull off an upset, getting to 10 conference wins is something I did not think Utah would do. Now, I do not predict Utah goes down to Provo and beats a red-hot BYU team, but it's a rivalry game. Crazy things have happened, and Utah beat BYU earlier this year. So if Utah climbs up to, I don't know, 7 or 8 seed, which feels like it would be a massive, massive win for a team that was finished 16th, stranger things have happened than a team like Utah going on a bit of a run in the Big 12. Now, that's a tough ask, but only time will tell. So, busy night tonight in the world of college basketball, both locally and nationally. We've had a fun show today, and don't forget, coming up in just about an hour and 15 minutes, we will bring you pregame coverage of Utah taking on West Virginia. Now, Tim McMahon covers. Is REO Speedwagon Yacht Rock? I honestly don't know. I feel like it might be. This is a great song, though.
Is REO Speedwagon Yacht Rock?
Got to shout out my Uncle Nate, massive REO Speedwagon fan. I feel like they might be. I honestly don't know.
I'm trying to think of what, I mean, obviously rock is way too general, but what are they in there with? Queen, Journey?
Maybe
I don't really know. They're kind of in their own little lane.
Maybe they're not yacht rock. I don't know. Anyway, you guys don't give a rip about that. Busy show today. Goodness gracious. Of course, tracking the news that Alex Jensen, according to multiple reports, is in advanced talks with the University of Utah to take the head coaching job for the Utes. Utah basketball comes your way coming up on the other side. We'll have pregame coverage with Bill Riley and Sean Mooney. West Virginia in town. Josh Eiler, interim head coach. I wonder how he's digested the news cycle today. So that's been the main piece of news. I got to say, man, if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, I'm not saying that Nico Harrison should lose his job, but what a catastrophic. This team was in the NBA Finals a year ago. They trade Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. He hurts himself after a quarter and a half. They lose Derek Lively. They lose Daniel Gafford. And Kyrie, who'd become this like hero and leader and is still a really awesome player, tears his ACL, and he's out for the rest of the season. Just a rough scene if you're a Mavericks fan. Saquon Barkley got paid today. He's now the highest paid running back in pro football, as he should be. The Jets have released Devontae Adams. Who knows what's next there? Let me ask you this, Porter, before we say goodnight. We're going to have Kyle Whittingham on the program tomorrow. Oklahoma announced today that they became the latest blue blood in college football. They're not canceling their spring game, but they are adjusting the approach. So it's probably just going to be like, I don't know, drills, and it's not going to be a scrimmage. They cut the roster in college football to 105, and you have to have 105 prior to your first game. So I kind of get it, because the spring game isn't what it used to be. You think we could be in a scenario where this is going to be widespread in college football, where programs simply just tap out of spring games altogether?
Yeah, well, we're already there. And what you're seeing now is, as you mentioned, the schools that are still doing it are doing it in a certain way. And even though Utah, right, they will have their spring game, let's be clear. Part of the reason they will have their spring game is because it is a branded memorial event for Ty Jordan, Aaron Lowe. All of the proceeds from that go to the 22 Forever Foundation and to the families of those kids. So there's a motivation to have that game, but it's not going to be a game. It's not going to be a scrimmage. Kyle Whittingham's not going to throw his first team out there versus his second team and give you guys a football game. If you show up to Rice-Eccles Stadium on April 19th, I believe is the date, you're going to see essentially a practice. There may be a little bit of 11-on-11 work, but it's going to be a practice, much like the rest of the spring football that you're going to see at the University of Utah. And I think programs can still use it as a revenue source, as you know, a way to somehow keep fans engaged throughout the offseason. But yeah, you're not going to see like an actual football game being played in the spring really anywhere in the country in the near future.
In case you missed it, a really cool announcement from the University of Utah about 4 hours ago or so. What's being called a transformational $14 million estate gift to Utah Athletics for its Crimson Club Legacy Society. And this has been earmarked specifically for women's athletics programs. So the legacy gift will create an endowment that will significantly benefit key initiatives for women's athletics in perpetuity. So some really good stuff there. All right, well, enjoy the college basketball. A big one for both Utah and BYU. Utah takes on West Virginia. Both teams have 8 wins in conference. And then BYU aims to take on Iowa State for the inside track to become a top 4 seed in the Big 12 tournament, which would give Brigham Young a double bye into the quarters, which would be quite an accomplishment, I'll tell you what. All right, Porter, before we get out of here, Wednesday show tomorrow. What can our listeners expect?
On a Wednesday, you're going to hear from Chris Comrani, a usual Friday staple, but since you're out later in the week, CK is going to stop by on a Wednesday in studio. Andy Larson for the latest in Jazzland. And then, as you mentioned, Kyle Whittingham, the head ball coach of Utah football, will stop by previewing spring and the offseason for the Utes.
There you go. Jam-packed Wednesday show, so join us for that, and we will say goodnight. Special thank you to Sarah Todd, Tim McMahon, Aaron Falk, and Ken Pomeroy for any of the sound you may have missed from the program today. Head on over to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store for free. And then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, we have a podcast page. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. And the magic of modern-day digital consumption is you get to listen to whatever portion of the show you want on your time, so you don't have to yell at your radio if I'm not talking about what you want me to talk about, because I know you do that. So head over to your preferred podcast catcher, search The Drive with Spence Checketts, give us a rating and a review. subscription, whatever they ask you to do. Follow along. Say nice things in the comments. Give us a good rating and all the stars. It actually helps. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy some Utah hoops coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN.